The Atlas Biotech penthouse felt unnaturally still, like the silence was holding its breath. Outside, the world was on fire with chaos and headlines, but up here it was all glass, steel, and quiet. Dr. Connors was already gone, racing to carry out Sam's orders like they were divine commandments. The Genesis serum wasn't a research project anymore. It was a loaded gun pointed at the world. Sam didn't reach for his phone. He didn't open a laptop. "Etherlink," he said. The air in front of him warped like heat over asphalt, then solidified into a sleek, glowing interface. "All systems nominal. Host," the AI replied, voice smooth and steady. "Begin protocol." "Prometheus," Sam said. "Phase 1. Target acquisition." The hologram shattered into a swarm of light points. Each point represented a person. Medical histories, genetic markers, donation records, political footprints, social impact scores, all of it flickered and rearranged in real time. "Filters," Sam continued. "Terminal illnesses only. Untreatable by current medicine. High positive impact on society. No connections to rival corporations. Age, money, status irrelevant." "Understood." "Processing," Etherlink replied. The galaxy of lights began to disappear, snuffed out one after another, until only a faint constellation remained. Wander points. Wander names. 100 people who had already run out of time. "Phase 2, Sam said quietly. Deployment. Across the globe, in hospital wards, cramped apartments, private estates, and white-walled clinics, 100 devices lit up at once. No ringtone, no notification sound, just a simple message stamped with the Atlas Biotech sigil. "You have been selected for the Atlas Biotech Genesis Initiative. Your condition qualifies for a new treatment. This is not an experiment. This is a cure. One dose will arrive within the next hour. A medical support unit is on standby. The choice is yours." At the Mayo Clinic, an elderly astrophysicist, skin paper-thin and veins bruised from failed chemo, stared at the tablet in his trembling hands. He'd already said his goodbyes. He'd already accepted the end. In Tokyo, a young elementary school teacher with muscular dystrophy read the message and broke down, the phone slipping from her fingers as she sobbed. In England, a retired UN diplomat with advanced Parkinson's squinted at the email on his desktop and frowned. "Ridiculous," he muttered. "This has to be a scam." Then, exactly an hour later, the world blinked. Silent drones glided through the air, landing on balconies, rooftops, courtyards, and loading docks. Hospital staff froze as one hovered level with a ninth-floor window. Each drone carried a single capsule. Each capsule held a single vial, a glowing blue liquid that looked almost alive. The Genesis serum. A guided medical AI appeared on their screens, answering every question, explaining every risk and parameter in clinical, comforting detail. No pressure, no threats, just a choice. One by one, they made it. One by one, they pressed the injector to their skin and pushed the plunger. 72 hours later, the world exploded. The Daily Bugle ran the story in screaming font. For once, it wasn't Spider-Man on the front page. It was the astrophysicist standing on a balcony in a crisp suit, hair thick and dark again, posture straight, eyes bright. The headline read, "Miracle or Mad Science? Atlas Biotech's Genesis shocks the world." The article was a frenzy of before and after photos, hospital records, and interviews. 100 cases. 100 documented impossible recoveries. Cancer, gone. Neurodegeneration, reversed. Bodies not just restored, but optimized. Doctors were raving or panicking. Research labs were demanding samples. Governments were calling emergency meetings. Nobody had an explanation. In SHIELD HQ, Nick Fury glared at the report like it had personally insulted him. Across from him, Maria Hill scrolled through a flood of classified updates on her tablet. "It's all confirmed, sir," she said. 100 individuals. All terminal. All fully recovered. In most cases, physical and cognitive baselines are above previous peak levels. Some are measuring as enhanced. Fury folded his arms. "Give me that serum." Hill didn't flinch. Atlas facilities are locked down tighter than most black sites. and the vials used for the first wave were keyed to specific genetic profiles. Even if we stole one, it would be useless. Fury's eye narrowed. He's not just curing people, he said. He's choosing people. That's leverage, not medicine. Control. At Stark Tower, Tony tossed the bugle onto his desk and watched it slide to a stop beside a holographic model of the Genesis molecule. Jarvis, rerun the analysis, he said. We've already run it 217 times, Jarvis answered. Same conclusion. No mutagenic instability, no detectable long-term degradation, no viral piggybacking. It is, by all known metrics, flawless. Tony stared at the rotating hologram. Nothing's flawless, he muttered, especially not when a guy like Sam Jackson is holding it. So where's the knife hidden in this miracle? Huh. Back in Atlas Tower, Sam didn't bother with the news feeds. He already knew the headlines. On the wall-sized display in front of him, a world map pulsed with 100 green dots. Every dot represented a life pulled back from the edge. A soft buzz came from the intercom. Mr. Jackson, his assistant said carefully. Victoria Snow is here to see you again. She, didn't come alone this time. She brought important people. Sam's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Send them in. The doors parted. Victoria walked in first, poised and polished, but there was tension in her shoulders. This time she wasn't the spearhead. She was the escort. Beside her walked an older man, tall despite the weight of age on his features. His hair was silver, his face lined, but his gaze was sharp enough to cut. Sam recognized him immediately. Senator Samuel Stearns, the old lion of the Armed Services Committee, the kind of man who still made generals sit up straighter. SHLD's files had exposed the secret the public didn't know. The senator was dying. Aggressive brain cancer. Months left at best. He didn't take Sam's extended hand. He took in the office instead, the view, the screens, the map, and finally let his eyes lock onto Sam's. Mr. Jackson, Stearns said, voice rough like gravel. You just changed the world without asking anyone's permission. Whether you meant to or not, you've started a war. He stepped closer. I'm here, the senator continued, to discuss the terms of your surrender. Sam leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, fingers steepled in front of him. His expression never wavered. Senator, he said, calm and clear, this isn't a war. He nodded at the glowing map behind him. This is evolution. There are no terms, no surrender. He gestured toward the chairs. But by all means, Sam added, sit down. Let's talk. Sam's office was quiet, but not the usual humming with hidden tech kind of quiet. This was heavier, denser. The air felt like it was waiting for something to break. Senator Samuel Stearns stood in front of the desk with his entourage, stone-faced aides, a pale, tight-lipped doctor, and Victoria Snow. None of them sat. They weren't here as guests. They were here like they owned the room. Surrender was the wrong word, Stearns said, voice rough and worn but still carrying weight. His sharp gaze swept the office, then settled on Sam. Let's call it what it is. You released a weapon. You pulled the trigger, and the whole world watched. A weapon? Sam asked, still seated calm as ever. I see a key. I unlocked death, sickness, and decay for 100 people who earned it. You shattered every regulation on the books. One of the aides snapped, face flushing. Ethics, oversight, international. Sam's eyes slid to him just once. The man faltered and actually stepped back. The rules you're clinging to are body bags, stacked in slow motion, Sam said flatly. I didn't promise hope. I delivered results. 100 out of 100. Tell me your system can match that. Stearns lifted a hand. The room snapped quiet. Even half dying, the man radiated authority. I didn't come here to debate philosophy, Stearns said. We both know why I'm standing in this room. Sam did. He'd known before the senator ever set foot in Atlas Tower. Stage 4 brain cancer. Months, maybe less. Then let's stop pretending, Stearns went on, stepping forward with his cane. His voice dropped, suddenly intimate, like the others weren't there. You have what I need, and I have what you're missing. Sam tilted his head. And what's that, Senator? Legitimacy, Stearns said. The word hung between them. You've got technology that terrifies governments, Stearns continued. You've leapfrogged every research lab on the planet. You've made every regulator irrelevant. Their response will be simple: contain you, cripple you, or crush you. New laws, sanctions, black ops. If this escalates, the result isn't victory. It's global chaos. Markets, nations, alliances, all shaking. He leaned a little closer. But I can thread the needle. I can bring your miracle into the system instead of setting it on fire. I can write protections into law, normalize genesis, turn panic into policy. With me, you're not a rogue actor. You're the future of medicine. Sam didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew Stearns was right about the storm coming. In exchange for my life, Stearns said at last. In exchange for your life, Sam echoed. The senator's grip tightened on his cane. I don't want to go out as the last old man hanging on to power. I want history to say I helped build the next era. You saved me, and I'll open every door that matters. I'll give you a path where you don't have to fight everyone at once. Silence settled over the room. Even Victoria didn't move. Sam rose from his chair and walked around the desk until he stood directly in front of Stearns. Up close, the contrast was stark. One body burning with potential, the other held together by habit and willpower. You're right about one thing, Sam said quietly, edge creeping into his voice. I'm not interested in ruling over ashes. But don't confuse this with an equal partnership. He opened a drawer, took out a capsule, and held it up. Inside, the Genesis serum glowed faint blue. This is the future, Sam said. Your influence, your committees, your decades of connections, that's all old-world currency. You will take this. You will stand between Atlas and the people who want to drag us back. You will keep every promise you just made, not because of a signed document, but because the only reason you're still breathing is me. He extended the capsule. Stearns stared at it, then at Sam. For the first time, the old lion looked small. Human. Mortal. His hand shook as he reached out and took the capsule. The terms, he said, voice almost breaking, are acceptable. Sam gave a single nod. Welcome to the future, Senator. The spell broke. The aides turned, the doctor followed, and the group began to file out in stiff silence. At the door, Victoria paused and glanced back. Her face was pale. This wasn't just business anymore. She finally understood what Sam had become. She left without a word. Sam turned back to the window. The city lights spread out beneath Atlas Tower like circuitry. Somewhere out there, a dying man was about to be reborn under his hand. The first major piece was locked in place. The most powerful politician in the world hadn't become his partner. He'd become his shield. The game board had changed. The old rules were gone. From now on, Sam was the one making them. The news broke not with a whisper, but with a seismic roar that dwarfed the initial Genesis revelations. Stearns' miracle, terminal diagnosis vanishes. Senator endorses New Dawn Biotech Act. The headlines were everywhere. Video footage showed Senator Samuel Stearns, not hunched and frail, but standing straight-backed on the steps of the Capitol, his voice strong and clear, announcing the groundbreaking legislation that would fast-track humanity-saving biotechnology. He spoke of hope, of a future free from the scourge of disease, of American leadership in a new age. He made no mention of the brain tumor that had been killing him just weeks before, but he didn't have to. The transformation was undeniable. Shield Triskelion Command Center. Nick Fury watched the press conference on a wall of screens, his face a granite mask of fury. He bought him, Fury growled to Maria Hill, who stood beside him, her own expression grim. He didn't just give him the serum. He owns him. Lock, stock, and barrel. Worse than that, sir, Hill replied, her tablet displaying the draft language of the New Dawn Act. He's not just a beneficiary. He's a true believer. Stearns' people are calling this his legacy. The bill gives Atlas a near-total exemption from FDA oversight. It's a corporate charter to rewrite human biology, and Stern is leading the charge. Get me in a room with Stern, Fury demanded. Today, before this ship sails completely off the cliff. And I want a full-thread assessment on what happens if this serum gets weaponized. If Stern can be turned, so can a soldier. So can an entire army. In a hidden chamber deep within the Triskelion, a different conversation was taking place. Alexander Pierce watched the same feed, a faint, approving smile on his lips. Astonishing, he murmured to the silent Jasper Sitwell. Fury sees a threat. I see an opportunity. A serum that can create perfect soldiers, enhance loyalty, perhaps even reverse aging for our key operatives. Hydra has always sought order through strength. This Jackson, he may be the greatest asset we never knew we needed. Activate the asset. I want a sample of that serum. The direct approach is now necessary. Star Tower, New York. Tony Stark was uncharacteristically quiet. He watched the political and media circus on his holographic display, a deep, unsettling unease settling in his gut. Jarvis, he said, his voice uncharacteristically somber. Cross-reference Stern's public medical records from 6 months ago with his current physiological output from that press conference. Heart rate, micro-expressions, vocal stress analysis. The works. Already completed, sir, Jarvis's calm British voice responded. The variance is statistically impossible. Cellular regeneration aside, his neuromuscular control and cognitive response times indicate a biological age approximately 30 to 35 years younger than his chronological age. The serum doesn't just cure. It appears to induce a state of peak physiological rejuvenation. Tony leaned back, running a hand over his face. He's not just selling a cure for cancer, Jay. He's selling time. He's selling youth. Do you have any idea what people will do for that? What would have done for that to give a pepper? To Rhodey? He gestured angrily at the screen. This isn't a medical breakthrough. It's a societal atom bomb. And this guy, this Sam Jackson, just lit the fuse. Shall I prepare a statement, sir? A call for caution. Caution. Tony barked a laugh with no humor. They're throwing a parade? Jarvis. Nobody wants to hear caution when you're offering them the fountain of youth. He pulled up a hologram of Sam Jackson's corporate profile. Who are you? A ghost who builds empires and plays God with biology. Run a new, deep-level scan on every patent, every material shipment to Atlas. There has to be a source. Something this big doesn't just appear out of a fried rice shop in Brazil. Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Westchester. In the quiet calm of Professor Xavier's study, the mood was equally tense. The core X-Men, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, and Beast were gathered around the professor's desk, where a large screen showed the same news footage. The potential for good is immense, Charles, Hank McCoy said, his voice full of the scientist's awe but tinged with worry. To eradicate disease, to heal the world, it's what we've always hoped for. It is a beautiful dream, Hank, Professor X replied, his fingers steepled. But dreams can be twisted. I attempted to make contact with Senator Stearns's mind during his speech. The change is profound, but there is a uniformity to his thought patterns now. A singular focus on this new dawn that feels less like passion and more like programming. Jean Grey shuddered. I felt it too, Professor. It's not overt control like Emma Frost could impose. It's subtler. Like his entire worldview has been realigned to perfectly accommodate Sam Jackson's vision. It's peaceful, but it's absolute. Storm's expression was grave. So, it is not merely a cure. It is a conversion. What happens when this serum is offered to world leaders? To generals? Mutants are feared for our natural gifts. What will they do to humans who can by perfection? Cyclops crossed his arms, his jaw set. Our mission remains the same. Protect a world that fears and hates us. But now we have to protect it from a future it seems desperate to embrace without asking the price. We need to find out what that price is. If this serum can alter the mind, even subtly, it represents a threat to free will on a global scale. Atlas Biotech, Sublevel 7. The Winter Soldier moved like a phantom through the sterile white corridors. His cybernetic arm whirred softly as he overrode a final magnetic lock. The door to the primary Genesis serum storage vault hissed open. Inside, rows of refrigerated units hummed, each containing vials of shimmering blue liquid. Success. He stepped inside, and the world changed. There was no alarm, no blast door slamming down. Instead, the air itself became a wall. It was like stepping into a tunnel of solidified glass. He could see the vault, the serums, but he could not move forward. He could not move at all. His enhanced muscle strained, his cybernetic arm exerting force that could bend steel. It was useless. The very space around him had been locked into an unbreakable stasis. From the speakers in the ceiling, a calm, synthesized voice echoed. Unauthorized biological signature identified. Lethal intent registered. Aegis Core containment protocol activated. In his penthouse lab, Sam watched the feed. The Winter Soldier was frozen mid-stride, a statue of lethal intent, perfectly preserved. There was no struggle, no dramatic fight. There was only absolute, effortless control. Sam gave a mental command. The air inside the vault shimmered, and the Hydra assassin was lifted off his feet, rotated horizontally, and held immobile. A panel opened, and a non-invasive scanner passed over him, cataloging every weapon, every implant, every trace of his identity. Package secured, Sam murmured to himself. A gift for Fury, and a message to Pierce. He had no need for complex weapons or disintegration beams. The Aegis Core, the manifested concept of protection, made any such tools obsolete. His defense was not an action, it was a state of being. His territory was inviolable. The unraveling was underway. Governments were scrambling, ideologies were clashing, and shadows were probing. Sam Jackson had lit the fuse, and from within his unbreakable fortress, he watched the world react, ready to shape the inevitable explosion. The silence was the most unnerving part. Nick Fury stood over a holodeck in a secure briefing room, the air thick with a frustration that had been simmering for 2 days. Maria Hill and a handful of Level 8 agents formed a tense audience. The operative is 48 hours past his scheduled check-in, Hill stated, her voice tight. All protocols for a compromised mission have been enacted. There has been no signal, no trace. It's as if he vanished in a thin air the moment he breached the Atlas Tower sublevels. Someone added, "We've scrubbed all satellite and street-level surveillance. No one saw him enter. No one saw him leave. Atlas Tower's external activity has been completely normal. It's a ghost story." Fury's eye was fixed on a 3D schematic of the Atlas Tower. A Level 8 infiltration specialist, vetted by Pierce's own Security Council, goes dark without a whisper. No alarm triggers. No bodies. No blast marks. What kind of security does that? It's not a fortress. It's a black hole. Sir, an analyst interrupted, his voice laced with confusion. We're receiving a Priority 1 encrypted data packet. The point of origin is it's routing through our own servers, but the source signature is from inside the Atlas Tower. A cold dread settled in the room. The packet bypassed every firewall, appearing on the main screen as if it had always been there. It decrypted itself to reveal 2 files. The first was a detailed biometric and cybernetic scan of a man. The data was staggering. Enhanced musculature, a sophisticated prosthetic left arm, evidence of severe psychological conditioning. It was the profile of a top-tier assassin. The second file was a high-resolution image. The same man from the scan, clad in black tactical gear, was suspended mid-stride in a sterile white corridor. His face was a frozen mask of shock and strain, muscles bulging against an invisible force. He was perfectly, impossibly contained. The room was dead silent. Fury leaned forward, his good eye wide with a shock he rarely showed. "What in the name of... Who is this?" "Run facial recognition." "Now." "Running, sir," the analyst said, fingers flying across a console. The system churned for a moment before displaying a result that made the blood drain from the agent's face. "Facial recognition. It's a hit. But it's impossible." "Spit it out," Agent Fury growled. "The match is for Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes, United States Army, 107th Infantry. Reported Kia in 1944. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hum of the servers. Bucky Barnes, Captain America's long-dead best friend. A ghost from World War II, frozen in time inside a modern-day corporate tower. Hill was the first to speak, her voice a whisper. "This can't be right. It's a trick. A disinformation tactic. Look at him, Fury snapped, pointing at the image. That's not a photoshopped picture. That's a man who shouldn't exist, caught in a trap we can't even understand. The implications crashed down on him. An assassin, decades old, working against S.H.I.E.L.D. interests, sent on a mission authorized by Alexander Pierce. He turned to Hill, his expression grave. This changes everything. This isn't just about Atlas anymore. We have a ghost in our own machine. Someone inside S.H.I.E.L.D., someone high up, is running operations with assets we didn't know existed. He didn't say Pierce's name, but the unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. Jackson didn't just capture an intruder. He sent us a message and a warning. He's showing us that he knows we've been compromised, even if we didn't. Fury's mind raced. The paranoia that was his greatest weapon now turned inward. Lock this down. Level 10 clearance only. I want a full, quiet audit of every operation Pierce's council has greenlit in the last 10 years. And give me everything we have on the Howling Commandos and the circumstances of Barnes' death. Jackson just handed us a 70-year-old cold case that's hotter than a plasma grenade. Hydra Safe House, Washington, D.C. Alexander Pierce watched a different screen, a blank one. The asset silence was a void, and voids were dangerous. Jasper Sitwell stood before him, pale and sweating. The asset has been neutralized, Sitwell reported. Complete communications blackout. Atlas security is unlike anything in our files. It's non-lethal, total containment. We have no data on the technology. Pierce's face remained a placid mask, but a vein throbbed in his temple. The Winter Soldier was his most valuable tool, a scalpel for the most delicate operations. His loss was a catastrophic blow. This is no longer a simple acquisition, Pierce said, his voice deceptively calm. This is a direct challenge. Jackson has not only stopped us, he has taken our weapon. The question is, what does he intend to do with it? You think he'll expose the asset? Sitwell asked, horrified. To what end? To accuse a respected World Security Council member of employing a dead war hero as an assassin? It would be dismissed as insanity. Pierce steepled his fingers. No, he will use him as a bargaining chip. Or worse, he will attempt to reverse the conditioning. That is the true threat. He stood up, his mind working through the new calculus. Our strategy must change. Direct action against Atlas is suspended. The priority is now damage control and misdirection. We must ensure that if Barnes is revealed, the narrative is one of a tragic, brainwashed victim, and that any connection to us is buried so deep it can never be found. He gave Sitwell a cold look, and we find new leverage. Jackson has shown he values his secrets. We must show him we value our own survival more. Redirect resources. The focus is now on Jackson's external contacts. Find a weakness we can actually exploit. Atlas Biotech, Penthouse. Sam dismissed the image of the frozen assassin. The message had been sent. He had just thrown a lit match into the powder keg of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s internal politics. Etherlink's voice chimed. Host. S.H.I.E.L.D. internal communications indicate high-level confusion and panic regarding the asset's identity. Director Fury has initiated a clandestine audit of Councilman Pierce's activities. Perfect. Let Fury tear his own organization apart, looking for the Hydra snake. It would keep them both occupied. Intercepted Hydra communications indicate a strategic shift. Etherlink continued. Primary objective is now misdirection and containment of the Barnes incident. Secondary objective, target acquisition of non-combatant personnel associated with Atlas. Primary targets identified. Kyle, Senior Jackson. Sam's gaze hardened. So Pierce was slithering away from the direct fight, hoping to pinch him from the sides. A predictable, desperate move. Activate Guardian Protocol for all designated personnel, Sam commanded. Full Aegis Corps extension. They are to be protected with the same absolute priority as this tower. Any hostile contact is to be met with immediate and total neutralization. Acknowledged. Protective fields are now active. Sam looked out at the city. He had wanted to force a reaction, and he had gotten one far more profound than he'd expected. He had not just captured an assassin. He had unearthed a ghost that would haunt S.H.I.E.L.D. to its core. The unraveling was now a full-blown internal purge, and he held the key piece. All he had to do was wait for the right moment to turn it. The hum of reinforced energy barriers was a constant, oppressive drone. Inside a sealed chamber, the man known as the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, hung in a perfect, unmoving stasis, encased in the same invisible field that had captured him in the Atlas Tower. Nick Fury stood before the observation glass, his arms crossed, his face a mask of grim contemplation. Maria Hill stood beside him, a data slate in her hand. "The biometrics are a perfect match, sir," Hill said, her voice low. "It's Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes. The cryogenic scarring, the cybernetic neural links, the arm, it's all there. Atlas's containment field isn't just holding him. It's suppressing his autonomic functions. Without it, our psych eval suggests he would have torn this wing apart." Fury's single eye remained fixed on the frozen assassin. A ghost from Captain America's past, delivered to our doorstep by a man who builds better mousetraps. He leaned closer to the glass, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Steve Rogers spent decades mourning his brother in arms. Turns out he was turned into a weapon by the very cancer we're trying to cut out of this organization." He turned sharply, the moment of vulnerability gone. "This stays in this room, Hill. No leaks, no files. As far as the World Security Council is concerned, the intruder Atlas neutralized was a non-viable genetic experiment. Barnes is a ghost, and he stays that way. I want to know who in our house gave the order to send him." Few months later, Malibu, Stark's workshop, December 2012. The cool blue light of the arc reactor illuminated Tony Stark's face, etched with exhaustion. The workshop was a chaotic symphony of half-built suits and hovering holographic schematics. JRVS's voice cut through the clatter of tools. "Sir, you have now been awake for 72 consecutive hours. Your cortisol levels are approaching a threshold I must classify as profoundly unwise. The human body requires rest, not a perpetual state of caffeinated engineering." Tony ignored him, his trembling hands guiding a microdrone to slot a repulsor node into the shoulder of the Mark 42. "Rest is what you do when the job is done, Jay. The job is very, very far from done." A flashback hit him without warning. The cold, airless silence of space, the Chitauri Leviathan's endless body coiling through a portal. He gasped, his hand flying to his chest as if to physically hold his heart in place. "The event in New York was an external incursion, sir," JRVS stated, his tone almost gentle. "It was not a failure of your design. It was a failure of scale." Tony snapped, slamming the faceplate shut. The Mark 42 lit up on its cradle, a beautiful, fragmented promise of control. One suit wasn't enough. A team wasn't enough. We need a system, an army. If I'd had 100 of these, we could have sealed that portal before it ever became a problem. Teams are fallible. Suits are loyal. On a secondary screen, a news feed played silently. Senator Stearns, looking impossibly vigorous, was giving a press conference. "And that is why the future of American security cannot rest on unstable, volatile technologies," Stearns declared, his voice booming with conviction. "We need the proven, stable science of Atlas Biotech. We need the certainty of Genesis, not the chaos of—" Tony muted the feed with a violent gesture. "Listen to that," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "Sam is selling peace of mind while I'm down here building a panic room around my entire life. He's probably never had a single doubt. Meanwhile, I can't even—" He trailed off, another wave of dizziness making him grip the workbench. "Sir, your heart rate is spiking again. Another anxiety episode is imminent." "It's not an episode, Jay." Tony breathed out, his knuckles white. "It's a fully justified, data-driven assessment of my own glaring inadequacies. Now, run the diagnostics on the autonomous targeting for the Mark 17. I want it live in 6 hours. Hydra Safe House, secure conference." The room was cold and dark, illuminated only by the glow of holographic schematics. Alexander Pierce sat at the head of the table, his expression placid. Around him, The flickering images of Jasper Sitwell, Brock Rumlow, and other key Hydra operatives formed a silent, grim council. The incident with the asset was not a failure. Pierce began, his voice calm and measured. It was a recalibration. Atlas has provided us with invaluable data on the upper limits of modern security. Rumlow's hologram sneered. He took the Winter Soldier without breaking a sweat. We didn't just lose an asset. We lost our best scalpel. And that forces us to evolve from scalpels to something broader, Pierce countered, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. He gestured, and the schematics shifted to display new designs. Nanotech weaved body armor, advanced neural compliance serums, and adaptive cloaking systems. We are not an organization that is defeated by a single setback. We learn, we adapt, we improve. Sitwell, ever the pragmatist, shifted nervously. And S.H.I.E.L.D.? Fury is digging. The barn situation has him spooked. A thin, cold smile spread across Pierce's face. Let him dig. The deeper Director Fury digs into this particular ghost, the more soil he will turn over, and the less he will see the garden we have planted all around him. By the time he finds what he's looking for, he will be standing in the heart of our harvest, and it will be too late. Stark Mansion, after Happy's bombing. The glow of the arc reactor reflects in Tony's eyes as he watches surveillance footage of the bombing on a large holographic display. Pepper stands nearby, arms folded, concern etched on her face. Happy lies in a hospital bed on another screen, unconscious. Pepper, he's in critical condition, Tony. The doctors say it's touch and go. Tony jaw tight, muttering, Happy was just doing his job, shadowing me, watching my back. And now, he slams a fist against the console. Now, he's lying there because some boogeyman with a bad accent decided to make a statement. Pepper flinches at his anger, but doesn't back down. Pepper, rage isn't going to help him. Or you. Tony snaps. You're right. Rage isn't enough. But focus? Focus will. He turns to the bank of cameras and reporters gathering outside his mansion gates. Feeds streaming live on the monitors. His expression hardens. The mask of Iron Man, even without the helmet. Tony, fine. You want a war, Mandarin? Let's give you one. He storms into the living room, Pepper following, protesting. Tony yanks a mic from the reporters, his voice amplified, raw, unfiltered. Tony turned to the cameras. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the deal. You hurt my friend. That's a mistake. Big one. And I'm not hiding behind gadgets or governments. My name's Tony Stark. And I'm not afraid of you. He points straight into the nearest lens. Tony, you want me? You know where I live. 10880 Malibu Point. I'll leave the door unlocked. Reporters erupt in shocked questions. Pepper's face drains of color. Tony tosses the mic back, storming inside. Pepper was furious, grabbing his arm. Are you insane? You just painted a target on us. Tony replied cold and detached. They already had us in their sights, Pep. I just lit up the bullseye. Now, at least I'll see them coming. Pepper shakes her head, frightened by the steel in his voice. Outside, the world eats up the soundbite. Inside, Tony already knows he's crossed a line he can't uncross. Scene, Malibu mansion attack. That night, the waves crash against the cliffside as Pepper paces the living room. Tony tinkers restlessly with the Mark 42 gauntlet on his arm, nerves frayed. Pepper, this isn't bravery, Tony. It's a death wish. Tony, without looking up, replied, Maybe, but it's my wish. The words hang heavy. Then the rumble of rotor blades fills the air. Pepper's head snaps up. A shadow passes across the windows. Pepper, Tony. Tony looks up, realization dawning. Oh shit. Missiles streak toward the mansion. The cliffside explodes in fire and glass. Tony shoves Pepper into the Mark 42 with a desperate gesture, the armor auto-sealing around her. Tony yelling, Get her out of here, JRVS. The suit rockets Pepper clear as Tony dives for cover. The house shatters, floor collapsing beneath him. He scrambles for another suit, system sparking. Another missile hits. The mansion begins to slide into the ocean. Debris crashes around him as JRVS drags the half-functioning Mark 42 onto him, piece by piece, like a lifeline. The final blast, throws him into the sea. He sinks, vision fading, before the thrusters kick in and the suit rockets him away, not to safety, but into exile, unconscious and broken. Rose Hill, Tennessee, a chilly garage. Tony Stark, stripped of his armor, his fame, and his confidence, stared at a wall covered in newspaper clippings and childlike drawings of the Mandarin. He was cold, tired, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. A young boy, Harley, watched him from a stool, slurping a soda. "So, you're not a mechanic." "I'm a lot of things, kid. Right now, I'm a tourist," Tony retorted, picking through a box of scraps. "Your famous house fell into the ocean. I saw it on TV." "Yeah, well, the foundation was always a little shaky." Tony's attempt to humor fell flat. He picked up a potato gun Harley had built. "Nice construct. Good muzzle velocity. Lousy payload. It's for potatoes," Harley deadpanned. "Everything's a weapon if you're brave enough. Or stupid enough." Tony's gaze drifted to a schematic he'd drawn of an extremist explosion. "You see this, kid? This is what we're up against. It's called extremists." Harley peered at it. "Is it like that Genesis stuff? The guy on TV said it makes you strong." Tony let out a short, bitter laugh. No, it's the opposite. Genesis, from what I can tell, it's like a perfect software update for the human body. Stable. Clean. This," he tapped the drawing of the explosion. "This is a hack. It's like trying to power a city by lighting a gas main on fire. It gives you a big, flashy boom, but eventually the whole thing blows. These people, they're walking time bombs." "So the guy in the cave," Harley said, referring to the fake Mandarin, "he's not the real bad guy. He's the smoke. I need to find the fire." Tony's mind was racing, the pieces clicking into place. "His name is Aldrich Killian. He offered me a partnership once. I was distracted." The compound, confronting the Mandarin. Using a homemade arc charger and a lot of nerve, Tony and Harley infiltrated a rural compound. They found Trevor Slattery, the actor playing the Mandarin, high and utterly terrified in a lavish set. "I just read the lines," Slattery stammered, cowering as Tony loomed over him. "The teleprompter, the makeup, the man with the hot hands, he paid me. It was a gig." "The man with the hot hands," Tony repeated, his voice dangerously calm. "Killian, he's a monster." Slattery whined. "He breathes fire. He made a guy explode just for getting a line wrong." Tony's comms crackled. Harley's voice, tight with fear, came through. "Tony, there are people coming. A lot of them. And they're glowing." Tony looked at Slattery. "You're coming with me." "What?" "No, you're my living, breathing press release." Tony grabbed him. "Now let's go. We're taking a little trip to Florida." The oil rig, final confrontation. The rig was an inferno. Tony, now in a battered, pieced-together Iron Man suit, fought his way through Killian's enhanced soldiers. The air shimmered with heat, and the roar of flames was punctuated by the screams of overloaded extremist subjects detonating. He finally found Killian on a main platform, and his blood ran cold. Next to him, held tightly, was Pepper Potts. Her skin was glowing a vicious, unstable orange, her eyes wide with pain and terror. "Tony," she cried out. "Let her go, Killian." Tony roared, his repulsors whining as they charged. "It's too late, Stark," Killian shouted back, his own body radiating intense heat. "She's already part of the great evolution. She's perfect, or she will be, once she burns through the imperfections." "I can fix her," Tony pleaded, his mind racing through chemical formulae. "I figure out the stabilizer." "There is no stabilizer." Killian laughed, a cruel, manic sound. "There is only the fire. She's going to burn, and you're going to watch." Suddenly, a sleek, unmarked drone sliced through the smoke and flames with impossible silence. It hovered for a moment before dropping a single medical capsule into the hands of James Rhodes, who was providing air support in his war machine armor. "Tony," Rhodes's voice was a mix of confusion and hope over the comms. "You are not going to believe this. Atlas Biotech just airdropped a care package. The readout says it's an extremist neutralizing agent. For Pepper." Tony's world froze. Atlas. Jackson. The man who represented everything stable and controlled that he wasn't. Pride warred with desperation. He saw the agony on Pepper's face. There was no choice. "Do it, Rhodes. Now!" Tony screamed. Without hesitation, Rhodes lunged, jabbing the auto-injector into Pepper's neck. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The violent orange glow suffusing her skin receded like a tide, cooling to a healthy, normal hue in seconds. The pain tension in her face vanished, replaced by confusion and exhaustion as she collapsed, stable and unharmed. Killian's triumphant roar turned into a shriek of pure, unadulterated fury. "No! What have you done?" His perfect, fiery revenge had been extinguished not by Iron Man's might, but by the cold, clinical efficiency of a rival. The distraction was all Tony needed. All his fear, his panic, his guilt, channeled into a single, furious purpose. "You shouldn't have touched her," Tony growled, and unleashed the full, devastating arsenal of the Iron Man armor upon Aldrich Killian. Malibu, the aftermath. Days later, the news celebrated Iron Man's victory. But the subtext was inescapable. Atlas Biotech's miracle cure saves the day. Tony had kept his promise to Pepper, sending his army of suits into a fiery self-destruct sequence as a symbol of his commitment. But as he stood in his now-empty workshop, the silence felt more oppressive than ever. He had won. He had saved the woman he loved. But the pivotal moment, the true miracle, had come from a silent drone and a man who never showed his face. "J. Arvius," Tony said, his voice quiet and hollow. "Yes, sir. I want a dedicated, continuous satellite feed on Atlas Tower. I want you to pull every byte of data that exists on Sam Jackson. His childhood, his business records, what brand of toothpaste he uses. Everything. Might I inquire as to the purpose of this deep-level surveillance?" Tony stared at the hologram of the unassuming skyscraper, a monument to a different kind of power. "Because he just proved something, Jay. While I was busy building a bigger bomb to fight the monsters, he was building a world where the monsters don't matter. And I need to know if he's the savior or the next and final threat." The battle was over, but a new, colder war had just begun. Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Bethesda, Maryland. The air smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. In a private room, Colonel John Garrett stared at the ceiling, his body broken. An IED in Afghanistan had left his spine shattered, his legs useless. He was a warhorse put out to pasture, his career, his purpose, over. A visitor entered. No uniform, just an impeccably tailored suit. The man's presence was calm, unnervingly so. "Colonel Garrett," the man said, "my name is Sam Jackson. I've read your file. Your service record is exceptional." Garrett let out a bitter, hollow laugh. It was exceptional. Now I'm a museum piece. What do you want, Mr. Jackson? A donation? My story's not very inspirational these days. On the contrary, Sam replied, pulling a single, sleek medical capsule from his pocket. I'm not here for a donation. I'm here with a job offer and a signing bonus. He placed the capsule on the bedside table. This is the Genesis Serum. It will do what your doctors cannot. It will rebuild your spine. It will restore your legs. It will make you stronger, faster, and more resilient than you have ever been. Garrett's eyes, which had been dull with resignation, sharpened with a mix of fury and desperate hope. "Get out. I don't know what kind of sick joke this is, but get the hell out of my room." "This is no joke, Colonel." Sam's voice was flat, factual. "I'm assembling a unique force. Men and women who have been discarded by the system they swore to protect. I'm offering you a chance to serve again, with a new body and a new purpose. A purpose beyond politics and borders." He leaned forward slightly. "The choice is yours. You can remain here, a monument to failure. Or you can take this, stand up, and become the first soldier in a new kind of war. You have 1 hour to decide." Sam left without another word. An hour later, Colonel John Garrett, his body humming with a vitality he'd forgotten was possible, walked out of Walter Reed. He left no paperwork, no record. He was a ghost. The reclamation and the sanctuary. Garrett was the prototype. Sam's recruitment was a silent, surgical process. He targeted the best of the broken, a Marine raider who lost her eyes and an arm, an Air Force pararescueman with severe burns, a Delta Force operator with a traumatic brain injury. They were offered a choice in their darkest moment, and they all chose to walk again, to fight again. Their rehabilitation and training occurred in a place Etherlink had designated the Sanctuary, a decommissioned Atlas Biotech geological survey outpost on Ilha de Phoenix, Phoenix Island, a remote volcanic island off the Brazilian coast purchased through a dizzying array of blind trusts. To any satellite or audit, it was a dormant facility. Here, the reclaimed, as Garrett called them, learned the limits of their new bodies. They were stronger, faster, and healed from wounds in minutes. They were the perfect soldiers, and they owed everything to Sam. Their missions were not assaults. They were erasures. Etherlink, with its godlike access to global data, would identify targets. A secret AIM lab experimenting on mutants in Sokovia, a Roxxon black site holding an inhuman, a clandestine military prison for anomalous individuals. The Wraiths, as they began to call themselves, would move in. There were no explosions, no frantic firefights. They moved with silent, overwhelming precision, disabling security, neutralizing personnel with non-lethal efficiency, and extracting the test subjects. To the world, it looked like internal accidents, data wipes, or mysterious disappearances. They left no traces, only confused and empty facilities. The rescued mutants and enhanced individuals, broken and terrified, were brought to the sanctuary. Sam, or a trusted medic, would administer a tailored Genesis serum. It stabilized their powers, healed the damage from experimentation, and optimized their biology just as it had for the soldiers. A young woman who could phase through matter, not Kitty, her system previously racked with energy feedback, found she could now control it perfectly. A boy whose skin could generate rock-like armor, once cracked and bleeding, now had control over a seamless, durable shell. They were given the same choice as the soldiers: leave with a new identity and a clean bill of health, or stay and train. To a person, they stayed. They had been victims of the world's darkness. Sam had not just saved them. He had given them the power to ensure it never happened again. Their loyalty was not bought. It was forged in salvation. Hydra's safe house, Washington, D.C. Alexander Pierce reviewed a series of disturbing reports. Jasper Sitwell stood before him, looking perplexed. The AIM facility in Sokovia went dark, Sitwell reported. Complete systems failure. All personnel found unconscious with no memory of the event. Their primary test subjects, 2 high-value mutants, are gone. No signs of forced entry. No weapon signatures. It's the same pattern as the Roxxon site in Colombia and the Defense Intelligence Agency Black Site in Taiwan. It's a ghost. Pierce scowled. A ghost that is systematically dismantling our rivals' research and acquisition programs. This is not a rival corporation. This is something else. A new player. Our analysts suggest it could be a splinter cell of S.H.I.E.L.D., one even Fury doesn't know about, or a foreign power with technology we can't detect. Perhaps, Pierce mused, his mind racing through possibilities. The thought that it was Sam Jackson never occurred to him. Why would a public-facing CEO, however brilliant, be involved in such shadow warfare? Jackson was building a public empire. This was the work of a specter. Increase security at all our primary facilities. And I want our own intelligence network focused on this. Find this ghost. If we cannot stop it, perhaps we can recruit it. Ilha de Phoenix, the sanctuary. Sam stood with Kyle on a cliffside, looking down at the training ground below. A squad of wraiths moved through an obstacle course. A soldier scaled a sheer wall in seconds, while the rock-skinned mutant created a moving shield for his team, and the phasing girl scouted ahead by walking directly through a concrete barrier. "It's an army," Kyle said, her voice soft. "It's a solution," Sam corrected her. While Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. play their games of spies and lies, and the Avengers wait for the next world-ending event to react to, we are actively cutting out the cancer. We are building a force that exists outside their paradigm. They don't see us because they don't know what to look for. And when they finally do, Kyle asked. Sam's gaze was unwavering. By the time they realize what we are, it will be too late. They will be looking for an enemy to fight. They won't be prepared for a force that simply removes problems from the board. He turned, the master of a silent war, his army of ghosts growing stronger by the day, completely unseen by the enemies they were already systematically dismantling. The operations of the Wraiths became a legend in the world's blackest budgets. A ghost that haunted the nightmares of human traffickers, rogue geneticists, and hidden prisons. Under Sam's directive and Etherlink's flawless intelligence, their reach grew. A new wave of recruits arrived at the sanctuary, their powers stabilized and honed by the Genesis serum. Dust, a young inhuman woman rescued from a Hydra lab in Eastern Europe. Her original power to disintegrate into a cloud of sentient dust was volatile, leaving her terrified and corporeal for only minutes a day. The Genesis serum gave her absolute control. She could now shift her form at will, becoming an intangible, observing mist or a swirling storm of cutting particles. Forge, a mutant inventor extracted from a covert DODC black site. His intuitive ability to understand and create any technology was shackled by a crippling technopathy that caused machines to fail around him. The serum didn't just stabilize him, it synergized. He could now interface with technology telepathically, his mind becoming a living blueprint and his touch a perfect repair tool. He was immediately put to work upgrading the Wraith's gear. Cypher, a mutant intelligence analyst liberated from a CIA Black Ops team that saw her as an asset. Her power was passive information absorption. She unconsciously downloaded data from any electronic signal she was near, leading to constant sensory overload and migraines. The serum gave her a filter. She could now actively tune her ability, pulling specific data streams from the airwaves, making her Etherlink's perfect organic counterpart. In a specially designed chamber deep within the sanctuary, Sam faced his new recruits. He wore simple, durable clothing, a stark contrast to their varied forms. Your powers are no longer a curse. They are your primary weapons, Sam stated, his voice echoing in the large room. But you rely on them too much. Today, you learn to fight without them. He gestured, and Etherlink activated a localized dampening field. Dust felt her connection to her particulate form sever. Forge's mental link to the room's systems went dead. Cypher's mind was plunged into a sudden, unnerving silence. Colonel Garrett, Sam said, if you would. Garrett, a grim smile on his face, led a squad of his original reclaimed soldiers. They were pure, physical perfection, their movements a symphony of enhanced strength and speed. The fight was brutal and one-sided. The powered recruits, stripped of their abilities, were quickly overwhelmed by the disciplined, hyperlethal soldiers. Dust was pinned in a joint lock. Forge was disarmed and put on his back. Cypher was effortlessly neutralized. Sam watched, his expression critical. Again, they sparred for hours. Sam would occasionally step in, moving with a speed that was a blur even to the enhanced soldiers. He didn't use his full power, but a fraction of it, enough to demonstrate flaws in their technique, to show them the gaps in their defense. He was an immovable object and an unstoppable force, a living lesson in the hierarchy of power. After the session, as the dampening field deactivated and the recruits gasped, feeling their powers return, Sam addressed them. The world will have ways to counter your abilities. Technology, other mutants, sheer numbers. Your power is your spear, but your body, your mind, your discipline, that is your shield. Never forget that. The lesson was seared into them. Their loyalty, already firm, was now mixed with a healthy dose of awe and fear for the man who could render them ordinary with a thought. A month later, Operation Crimson Dawn, the fall of the Red Room. The intelligence package from Etherlink was the most comprehensive yet. The location of the Red Room's primary mobile academy, a massive, stealth-equipped aerial carrier cruising over the Bering Sea. Schematics, guard rotations, and the identities of dozens of Black Widows, including the primary target, Natasha Romanoff's sister, Yelena Belova. This is our most high-profile target to date, Garrett briefed his squad leaders. Total annihilation. We collapsed their entire network. The widows are to be considered friendlies and primary extraction targets. All Red Room handlers and instructors are hostile. The assault began not with an explosion, but with a silent, systemic collapse. Forge, interfacing remotely via a satellite link provided by Etherlink, initiated a cascade failure in the carrier systems. Lights died. Engines sputtered. Communications went dead. Then, the Wraiths descended from a cloaked transport. They moved through the darkened, chaotic halls like reapers. Red Room guards, highly trained and ruthless, were met with an opponent that was simply better, stronger, faster, and utterly silent. They were disarmed, disabled, and secured before they could raise an alarm. Dust flowed through ventilation shafts, materializing behind key personnel and disabling them before flowing away again. Cypher, from the Commandeer Bridge, fed real-time enemy positions directly into the Wraith's tactical displays. Garrett found the main holding area for the Widows. They were lined up, ready for deployment or recalibration, their faces blank masks hiding a lifetime of trauma. "Stand down," Garrett commanded, his voice firm but not unkind. "We're not here to hurt you. Your prison is falling. We're here to give you a choice." Yelena Belova, her eyes sharp with a feral intelligence, stepped forward. "What choice? A life. A real one. Free of the chemical conditioning. Free of the handlers." He held up a medical capsule. "This will burn the Red Room's control out of your head. All of it. Then you can leave with a new identity, or you can stay and fight for the people who actually freed you." It was an impossible offer. But as the carrier began its controlled descent, guided by Forge to a remote, pre-scouted location in the Canadian wilderness, the Widows, one by one, accepted. On the bridge, the Red Room's director, Dracoff, was found cowering in a panic room. He looked up as the door was silently peeled open by a Wraith. "Who are you?" he whispered, terrified. "The consequence," the soldier replied, before rendering him unconscious for transport. In the aftermath, the world would learn that the infamous Red Room had mysteriously vanished. No wreckage, no bodies, just silence. In intelligence circles, it was the greatest mystery of the decade. At the sanctuary, a new wing was opened. Dozens of former Black Widows, their minds now their own, and their body healed thanks to the Genesis serum, began a new kind of training. They were quiet, deadly, and carried a ferocious, focused gratitude. Yelena Belova, standing beside Colonel Garrett, looked out at the training grounds. "This is a very strange place," she said, her Russian accent still thick. "It's the only place that makes sense," Garrett replied. "Welcome to the war you never knew you were fighting." Sam watched the reports from his penthouse. His army of ghosts had just absorbed one of the world's most effective espionage networks. He had not just destroyed an enemy. He had cannibalized it, turning its greatest weapons into his own. The silent war was escalating, and the balance of power in the shadows was shifting irrevocably in his favor. Hydra's safe house, Washington, D.C. Alexander Pierce stared at the world map on his screen, dotted with red markers indicating facilities that had gone dark. The AIM lab in Sokovia, the Roxon site, the DoD Black site, and the infamous Red Room, all stripped of their most valuable assets without a trace. It's a pattern, but not one of aggression. Pierce mused aloud to a tense Jasper Sitwell. It's curation. They're not destroying the facilities. They're harvesting the specimens. This isn't a rival. This is a collector. Our analysts are baffled, Sitwell admitted. The operational precision is beyond any known Special Forces unit. No comms traffic, no forensic evidence. It's as if the targets simply ceased to exist. The only consistent factor is that all targets were holding enhanced or mutant individuals. Pierce's eyes narrowed. A mutant liberation front with this level of sophistication? Unlikely. Magneto prefers grand statements, not ghosts. No, this is something new. Something disciplined. Keep searching. A ghost may not leave footprints, but it still displaces air. I want to know what is causing this disturbance. Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Westchester. In the profound silence of the cerebro chamber, Professor Charles Xavier's brow was furrowed in deep concentration. The usual psychic cacophony of mutant kind was a constant, flowing river in his mind. But lately there had been these small, quiet voids where the psychic presence of certain mutants simply vanished, only to reappear later, changed. Their signatures were still there, but they were stabilized. The chaotic, beautiful noise of their powers was now a controlled, harmonious frequency. And they were all clustered together, a tiny, silent island of order in the psychic maelstrom. The location was a blur, shielded, but the feeling was unmistakable. He opened his eyes, the great dome of Cerebro retracting. Jean Grey and Cyclops stood nearby. "Professor," Jean asked, sensing his unease. "There's a convergence," Xavier said, his voice heavy with thought. "A number of lost mutants, ones I had feared dead or imprisoned, have reappeared. Their minds are calm. Their powers, once a source of pain or fear, are now in perfect balance. It is a miracle, and yet it feels manufactured," Cyclops finished, his arms crossed. "Where are they?" "The signal is faint, deliberately obscured. Somewhere in the South Atlantic," Xavier replied. "Someone is not just rescuing our kind, Scott. They are perfecting them. And I cannot tell if they are a savior or a warden." SHIELD Triskelion Director's Office. Nick Fury didn't look up from the financial report on his holodeck as Maria Hill entered. "Hill, talk to me about Jackson's pocketbook." Hill didn't need to check her notes. "It's staggering, sir. In the 6 months since the Genesis Serum's limited medical rollout and the Hypercell's global launch, Atlas Biotech valuation has increased by 4,000%. We're estimating his personal revenue from the Hypercell alone to be in the range of $18 billion. The serum, through exclusive government and private healthcare contracts, is a black box, but it's easily another $5 to $7 billion. Fury finally looked up, his eyes sharp. "And what is our Go CEO doing with all that money?" "Buying more yachts." On the surface, aggressive expansion and R&D. But a significant, untraceable portion, we're talking billions, is flowing into a labyrinth of shell corporations and offshore accounts. It's being moved with a level of financial stealth that makes our black ops budget look like a public ledger. He's not just rich, sir. He's building a sovereign wealth fund in the shadows. He's building an empire, Fury corrected, standing up. One with its own army, its own economy, and its own goddamn power source. I want a projection. If he decided to, how long would it take for him to become more powerful than the United States? Hill met his gaze, her expression grim. "At this rate, sir, 5 years. Tops." While the spy masters and strategists worried, Sam's technology was quietly revolutionizing the world. A suburban home in Ohio. A father came home from work and plugged his family's electric car into a Hypercell home power bank the size of a small suitcase. "And we're good for the month," he told his wife, smiling. The constant anxiety over charging and the strain on the power grid was gone. Their home, powered by a cluster of hypercells on the roof, had become its own resilient microgrid. A community clinic in rural India. A doctor held a Genesis-derived Regan patch over a diabetic patient's chronic foot ulcer. Within hours, the inflammation had receded. Within a day, new, healthy skin was forming. It wasn't the full serum, but a trickle-down product that was erasing diseases of poverty and poor sanitation, one clinic at a time. A construction site in Dubai. The foreman watched as a silent, hypercell-powered crane lifted a massive steel beam. "No fumes, no noise, and it never needs to refuel," he said to his engineer. "It's like working in the future." The project was months ahead of schedule, its budget slashed by the elimination of diesel costs. A veterans hospital in Texas. A young soldier who had lost a leg to an IED stared in disbelief as he took his first steps on a new prosthetic. The limb, powered by a tiny hypercell and designed with materials science derived from the serum's regenerative principles, moved with a fluid, natural grace he thought was lost forever. It wasn't just a tool. It was a part of him again. The world was changing not with a bang, but with a quiet, relentless hum. People were living longer, healthier lives with cheaper, limitless energy. And with every car that never needed gas, every disease that was cured, and every life that was given back its potential, the name Atlas Biotech and the man behind it, Sam Jackson, became less of a corporate entity and more of a fundamental, indispensable part of the global infrastructure. He wasn't just selling products. He was weaving himself into the very fabric of civilization. Atlas Biotech, Secure Laboratory. Sam was in his white lab again, working on a new idea. The hypercell and Genesis serum had already made him famous, but he wasn't done. He wanted something new, something that would make people's lives easier. On his desk, a hologram showed the shape of a human-like robot. It didn't look fancy, just clean and simple. Etherlink, Sam said. Add the programs for house chores. Things like cleaning, fixing stuff, cooking, and helping old people or kids. Make it smart, not chatty. Acknowledged host, the AI replied, using information from over 4 million homes. The robot will learn the family's habits in 3 days. Its power source will be a small hypercell, lasting 5 years with only half an hour to recharge. Sam watched the hologram move. The robot wiped the table, sorted items, moved around the room smoothly. Everything it did was calm and exact. This one will be called the Aegis Steward, Sam said quietly. Sell it cheap enough so everyone feels they need one. He stood there for a while, just watching. The lab was silent except for the hum of the machines. It felt like the world was slowly falling into its pattern. Machines working perfectly, people depending on them more every day. London, an abandoned warehouse. The air in the derelict warehouse crackled with unseen energy. Jane Foster, driven by a scientist's insatiable curiosity, ignored the protests of her intern, Darcy Lewis, and the increasingly frantic beeping of her own equipment. "The readings are off the charts, Darcy," Jane exclaimed, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation. She pointed her meter at a seemingly solid brick wall. "But it's not coming from in here. It's through here." Before Darcy could shout another warning, Jane reached out, her fingers pressing against the rough brick. Instead of meeting resistance, her hand sank into the wall as if it were water. A shocked gasp escaped her lips as she lost her balance, stumbling through the solid matter into a hidden pocket dimension beyond. "Jane!" Darcy yelled, rushing forward, only to find the wall perfectly solid again. "Jane!" On the other side, Jane found herself in a cavern of shimmering, impossible geometry. Gravity seemed to shift and warp around her. And at the center of it all, suspended in the air, was a swirling, liquid mass of deep crimson. It pulsed with a malevolent, ancient light. "The source," she whispered, stepping closer, her scientific mind overriding all sense of self-preservation. She extended a hand, her fingers trembling. The ether did not wait to be touched. It recognized a host. With a sound like 1,000 shattering mirrors, it erupted from its prison, a torrent of liquid reality that slammed into Jane, enveloping her completely. It forced its way into her mouth, her nose, her pores, a violent, painful invasion. She screamed, a raw, primal sound as the infinite power of an infinity stone flooded her system, burning through her veins and rewriting her DNA. When the light faded, Jane collapsed to the stone floor, unconscious. The crimson energy had vanished, now residing deep within her cells. A London hospital, hours later. Jane lay in a hospital bed, drenched in sweat and writhing in discomfort. Darcy and a weary, frantic Eric Selvig stood by her side. "It's not a seizure, it's something else," Eric said, watching as the lights in the room flickered. A cup of water on the bedside table momentarily turned to shimmering smoke before solidifying again. "She's affecting reality around her." Suddenly, the windows of the private room shattered inwards, not with broken glass, but with a shower of golden light and the roar of thunder. Thor Odinson landed in the center of the room, Mjolnir in hand, his face etched with fear and urgency. "Jane!" he cried, rushing to her side. He knelt, taking her hand. The moment his skin touched hers, a wave of crimson energy erupted from Jane, throwing him back against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. The ether recognized the power of God and reacted defensively. Thor pushed himself up, his expression now one of grim understanding. He had felt that power before, in the ancient tales of his people. "Thor, what is it?" Darcy asked, her voice trembling. "It is the ether," Thor said, his voice low and heavy. "A power of infinite destruction from before the dawn of time. It is killing her. A mortal body cannot contain it." He moved to Jane's side again, more cautiously this time. "I must take her to Asgard. Our healers may have a way." He gently gathered her unconscious form into his arms. As he did so, a patch of darkness detached from beneath the hospital bed. Unseen by the god or the mortals, the Shadow Soldier, a being of pure darkness commanded by Sam Jackson, flowed up Thor's leg. With a touch as light as a breeze, it pressed a quantum communicator against a seam in his armor. The device bonded instantly. The soldier then dissolved, binding itself to the very shadow Thor cast in the bright room. "Hold on, my love," Thor whispered to Jane. Then, looking to the sky, he commanded, "Heimdall, bring us home." A pillar of rainbow energy tore through the ceiling, engulfing them. In a flash of light and a deafening crash, they were gone, leaving a stunned Darcy and Eric in the wrecked room. And hidden within the Bifrost's energy, a shadow and a silent device traveled to the realm of the gods. Asgard, the healing chambers. The finest healers in the 9 realms, led by the wise Air, worked over Jane. Their hands glowed with golden magic, their faces growing increasingly grim. "The stories are true," Air announced, stepping back from the bed. "It is the ether. It has bonded with her at a cellular level. It sustains her, even as it consumes her. To remove it is to kill her. To leave it is to let it burn through her mortal form." "How long does she have?" Thor asked, his voice hollow. "Days. A week at most. And that is only if we use all our arts to reinforce her body against the strain," Air replied. "There is no cure for this, my prince. We can only delay the inevitable." Odin All-Father entered the chamber, his single eye sweeping over the scene. He felt the ether's power, a familiar, hated signature from a war fought millennia ago. "The Dark Elves," Odin growled. "They were supposed to be extinct. Malekith will sense the ether's awakening. He will come for it." He turned to Thor, his expression stern. "She is a threat to all the 9 realms as long as the ether resides within her. We must find a way to contain it, or destroy it." "And what of Jane?" Thor demanded. "She isn't innocent. She is a casualty of a war she does not understand." Odin retorted. "The safety of the realms must come first." As the 2 gods argued, the Shadow Soldier observed from the shadows near the ceiling. It watched Frigga, Queen of Asgard, enter and place a comforting hand on Thor's arm. "There may be another way," Frigga said softly, her eyes full of compassion for the mortal woman. "I will use my magic to shield her, to slow the ether's corruption. It will buy us time to find a solution that does not require her sacrifice." Atlas Penthouse, days later. Sam observed the events in Asgard over the following days. He watched Frigga weave complex illusions to hide their location. He saw the tension mount as Asgard prepared for a war they knew was coming. The Asgardian strategy is reactive, ether link analyzed. They fortify their walls and trust in their inherent superiority. They do not anticipate the nature of the threat. They see war as a contest of strength, Sam replied. Malekith understands it as a contest of will. He will not meet their strength head-on. His prediction proved correct. Alarms blared through the Asgardian data stream. The Shadow Soldier's feed showed the terrifying sight of a dark elf warship, the Harvester, phasing directly through Asgard's planetary shields and materializing above the palace itself. Sam watched, a clinical observer, as the Dark Elves poured out. He saw Malekith, his face a mask of ancient hatred, and his lieutenant, the formidable Kor Stalgrim. Asgard, palace corridors. The Shadow Soldier, a silent spectator until now, flowed through the chaos. Its primary mission was observation. But as it moved, it passed Frigga's chambers. It saw the queen standing firm, a shimmering sword of light in her hand, placing herself between the invading dark elves and Jane Foster's hidden room. It saw Malekith and Algrim approach. The soldiers' programming was simple: observe, record, do not interfere. But a secondary, deeper command surfaced, an imperative to acquire valuable assets and intelligence. Frigga, the Queen of Asgard, was an asset of immense potential value. Her knowledge of Asgardian magic, her influence, her very life, were all valuable. Malekith raised his weapon. Algrim, the Coursed, lunged. The Shadow Soldier calculated the outcomes in nanoseconds. Outcome A: non-intervention. Frigga dies. Asgard is crippled. Data acquisition: minimal. Asset lost. Outcome B: intervention. Frigga lives. Potential for immense intelligence gain. High-value asset preserved. The decision was instantaneous. As Algrim's massive fist swept down to crush Frigga, a wall of absolute darkness solidified between them. It was not a physical barrier, but a void that absorbed all light, all energy, all force. Algrim's blow sank into the shadow and simply vanished. There was no impact, no sound. Malekith and Algrim froze, confused. Frigga, poised for a death that did not come, stared at the unnatural darkness that had saved her. From the shadows behind Frigga, the soldier manifested fully for a half-second, a tall, featureless silhouette of living darkness. It wrapped an arm around the queen's waist and pulled her backward, not through the door, but into the shadow cast by a towering statue. They vanished. Malekith roared in frustration, striking at the now empty space where Frigga had stood. He and Algrim turned their fury on the empty chamber before storming off to continue their search, believing the ether had been moved. A hidden alcove, deep within the palace. Frigga stumbled out of a patch of shadow in a deserted storage alcove, gasping. The Shadow Soldier stood beside her, immobile. "By the Norns, what are you?" she whispered, her magical senses reaching out. She felt no malice, no life force, only a profound emptiness and a sense of purpose. It was a tool, not a creature. The soldier did not respond. It simply pointed a shadowy hand towards a hidden passage that led to the palace vaults, the safest place in Asgard. Understanding dawned on Frigga. This was not a random act. This was a rescue. Someone, or something, had intervened. She looked at the silent, faceless being, 1,000 questions in her mind, but now was not the time. She nodded once, a queen acknowledging a debt, and fled down the passage to safety. The Shadow Soldier dissolved back into the darkness, its mission parameters updated. It had preserved a high-value asset. The ramifications of this action would now ripple through fate. Atlas Penthouse. Sam watched the entire event through the quantum link. He saw the soldier's split-second decision, the rescue, and Frigga's escape. The intervention was not part of the primary directive, Etherlink stated. "No," Sam agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It was better. We didn't just save a queen. We created a mystery. Odin will now know an unknown, powerful entity operates in his realm, one that saved his wife. That is a lever we can use in the future. And Frigga herself. She is now in our debt, whether she knows it or not. A queen's favor is a currency more valuable than any technology." He watched as the funeral for Frigga did not happen. Instead, he saw a relieved Thor reunite with his mother after the battle. He saw Odin's confusion and suspicion war with his gratitude. The timeline had been altered. A thread of obligation now connected the House of Odin to a shadow they could not see. The Shadow Soldier, its new objective complete, slipped into the secured chamber with the damaged Dark Elf grenade. The scan commenced. "Scan complete," Etherlink reported. A significant database on Dark Elf phase shift technology and gravimetric weaponry has been acquired. Sam leaned back. He had the data he wanted, and he had something infinitely more valuable, a foothold in the politics of the gods, all because a shadow had chosen to save a queen. Asgard, the throne room. Odin Allfather sat upon the Hlidskjalf, the ancient throne from which he could see across the 9 realms. But today, his single eye was not turned outward, but inward, scouring his own palace. The battle was over. The Dark Elves had been repelled, Malekith slain. But a greater mystery remained. His wife, Frigga, was alive. She had described her savior, a being of pure shadow, without form or voice. Heimdall had seen nothing. The Norns whispered of a thread pulled from fate's tapestry, timeline altered. Odin could feel it too, a subtle shift in the fabric of reality, a debt incurred that should not exist. He closed his eye, his consciousness expanding, the Odin force flowing through the golden halls. He sought not a presence, but an absence, a hole in perception, and in a shadowed alcove near the throne room itself, he found it, a patch of darkness that was too deep, too still, too intentional. Enough, Odin's voice boomed, filled with the power of the Allfather. The very stones of the palace trembled. You, who dwell in darkness, you who intervened, show yourself. For a moment, nothing. Then the shadow in the alcove stirred. It did not step out, but rather the darkness itself unfolded, rising to form the featureless, humanoid silhouette of the Shadow Soldier. It stood silently before the throne, a void in the shape of a man. Odin studied it, his gaze heavy with the weight of millennia. You are a tool, a messenger. You have no will of your own. I would speak with the hand that wields you. He leaned forward, Gungnir gripped tightly in his hand. Your master. Summon him. Now. The Shadow Soldier did not move, but the air around it grew cold. The shadows at its feet began to churn and deepen, swirling like a pool of black ink. Atlas Biotech, penthouse. The alert from Etherlink was immediate. Host, Odin Allfather has directly confronted the Shadow Soldier. He is demanding an audience with you. Sam, who had been reviewing the Aegis Steward production reports, looked up. A slow, deliberate smile touched his lips. The moment had come sooner than expected. Maintain the link. I'm going. He didn't head for a portal or a ship. He simply stood and stepped into the long shadow cast by his desk. The darkness enveloped him, and he was gone. Asgard, the throne room. The pool of shadow at the soldier's feet expanded, bubbling like tar. From its depths, a figure rose. It was not a dramatic emergence, but a seamless transition, as if he were simply stepping out of one room and into another. Sam Jackson stood before the throne of Asgard, clad in simple, modern attire, a stark contrast to the grandeur around him. He looked utterly calm, his hands resting casually at his sides. He had arrived not through the Bifrost, not through any magical gateway, but through the shadow of his own servant, just as the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, would. The silence in the throne room was absolute. The Einherjar guards tightened their grips on their spears, but a slight gesture from Odin held them back. Odin's single eye widened almost imperceptibly. He had expected a sorcerer, a demon, perhaps another ancient being. He had not expected a mortal, or something that wore the shape of one with such unsettling perfection. You, Odin said, his voice a low rumble. You are the one who commands the shadow. You saved my queen. I did, Sam replied, his voice even, carrying effortlessly in the vast hall. Or rather, my instrument did. An asset of immense value was at risk. It was logical to preserve it. Do not speak to me of logic, mortal. Odin's tone was dangerous. You have trespassed in my realm. You have meddled in affairs of gods. Who are you? Names are titles, Allfather. And titles are fleeting, Sam said, beginning to walk slowly, casually, along the length of the throne room, as if admiring the architecture. The Shadow Soldier fell in a step behind him, a silent sentinel. You may call me Sam. I am an architect. I build things, stable things. Your 9 realms, for all their glory, are chaotic, unstable. He stopped and turned to face Odin fully. You sit on a throne that sees everything, yet you did not see me. You wield a force that can shape worlds, yet you nearly lost your wife to a foe you believed extinct. Your strength is vast. Odin, but it has made you blind. Odin's knuckles were white on Gungnir. You dare? I dare because I can, Sam interrupted, his gaze unwavering. I'm not your enemy. Not today. I saved Frigga's life. That is a fact. It creates a debt. I am not here to collect it. I am merely here to acknowledge that it exists. He took a step closer, and the Einherjar tensed. You look for threats in the stars, in the fire of Muspelheim, in the ice of Jotunheim. But the old ways are ending, Odin. A new age is coming. One of order, of control. You can either adapt to it, or be left behind, ruling over the ashes of a world that has no more use for gods. Sam turned his back on the All-Father, a gesture of unimaginable audacity. My business here is concluded. The debt remains. We will speak again when the balance of power has shifted further. The air in the throne room grew heavy as Sam turned his back. Odin's single eye, which had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of gods, narrowed. This was not merely insolence. It was a fundamental challenge. You believe you can simply deliver your pronouncements and depart. Odin's voice was low and cold. He rose from Hlidskjalf, his presence expanding to fill the room with a crushing weight of age and dominion. He raised Gungnir and slammed its butt against the dais. Clang. The sound was the shattering of a pane of glass. The world folded. The golden hall, the Einherjar, the very air, everything shimmered and then fractured. In an instant, they stood in a vast, silent, gray plain under a sky of shifting, colorless clouds. A mirror realm carved from Odin's own will, a place of pure potential and absolute isolation. You are not the first upstart creature to believe its power unique, Odin stated his form, radiating a soft, internal light. This is a realm of my making. Here, the rules are mine. Your shadow walking will not avail you. Sam looked around, his expression one of analytical interest. A localized reality bubble. Impressive. He flexed his fingers, feeling the fabric of this pocket dimension. But you operate on a misunderstanding, All-Father. Odin's eye flashed. He thrust Gungnir forward, and the very space around Sam hardened, attempting to crush him in an invisible, reality-warping vice. It was a force that could compact a star into a diamond. Sam didn't move. He simply existed. The crushing space pressed against him and found no purchase. It was like trying to compress a hole in the universe. The space around him wasn't resisting. It was absent. You see, Sam said, his voice perfectly calm, you try to control space. I am its master. He raised a single finger. The hardened space around him didn't shatter. It unfolded. The complex magical matrix of Odin's mirror realm began to unravel at a fundamental level, the gray plane rippling like disturbed water. A flicker of disbelief crossed Odin's face. He roared, summoning the full might of the Odin force. Spears of pure, cosmic energy, each capable of piercing a world's core, materialized and shot towards Sam from all directions. Sam didn't block them. He opened his palm, and the space between him and the spears stretched into infinity. The lances of energy shot into the void, traveling forever into an endless expanse he had created mere inches from his skin. They never reached him. This is a cage you've built for yourself, Sam said, taking a step forward. With that step, the distance between them vanished. He wasn't teleporting. He was simply redefining their positions, collapsing the space so that he now stood directly before the All-Father. Odin, for the first time in millennia, took an involuntary step back. He swung Gungnir, the spear moving with the speed of a thought, its enchanted tip aimed to pierce Sam's heart. Sam caught it. His hand closed around the tip of Gungnir, not with a clang of metal, but with the sound of absolute silence. Odin's forward momentum ceased utterly. The king of Asgard strained, his divine muscles bulging, the Odin force flaring around him in a brilliant aura. It was like trying to move the universe itself. Sam's arm didn't budge a millimeter. Your strength is the strength of storms and galaxies, Sam said, his grip unyielding. Mine is the strength of the framework that contains them. He didn't shove or twist. He simply pushed with his concept of strength. The force transmitted through the spear wasn't kinetic energy. It was the absolute, unbending assertion that he was stronger. Odin was thrown backward, not in an arc, but in a straight line, as if the very concept of away from Sam had been enforced upon him. He crashed into the non-ground of his own mirror realm, the impact sending silent shockwaves through the gray expanse. Before Odin could rise, Sam gestured. The space around the All-Father compressed, not with force but by definition. Odin found himself trapped in a cube of solidified space, a prison where the very air was as unyielding as neutron star matter. He struggled, his power flaring, but he was fighting the universe's own rules, now dictated by Sam. Sam walked over to the hovering cube, looking at the trapped god within. "You asked my purpose. I am ensuring that when the true storms come, there is something left standing afterwards. Something orderly. Your wife's life was a down payment on that future." He leaned closer, his voice calm but absolute. "The age of God shouting until the universe breaks is ending. I am the quiet that comes after the thunder. The debt stands, Odin. Think on it." With a final glance, Sam didn't break the mirror realm. He simply stepped sideways out of it. The pocket dimension, its rules now fundamentally compromised by his presence, began to destabilize, its gray hues flickering erratically. Odin, freed from the spatial prison as Sam's will departed, landed on one knee, Gungnir clattering beside him. He gasped, not from injury, but from a sheer, terrifying implication of what he had faced. It wasn't raw power that had defeated him. It was a higher authority over reality itself. The mirror realm shattered back into the familiar gold of the throne room. Odin stood alone on the dais, the Einherjar staring in confusion. The All-Father, the most powerful being in the 9 realms, felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The shadow wasn't just a visitor. He was a fundamental law of the new universe, and he had just demonstrated that the old gods were subject to his rules. The quiet, as the mortal had called it, was absolute. Asgard, the healing chambers. The air still hummed with the residual energy of Odin's failed confrontation. In the healing chambers, Jane Foster lay in a magically induced stasis, the ether's crimson energy flickering uneasily beneath her skin. Air and her assistants had just begun their evening rounds when the space at the foot of Jane's bed warped. It wasn't a bifrost or a flash of light. It was a silent, seamless transition, as if a piece of another reality had been slotted into place. Sam Jackson stood there, his presence causing the magical wards in the room to flicker and die. The healers froze, their golden magic sputtering out. Sam paid them no mind. His eyes were fixed on Jane. He approached the bed, his movements economical and precise. Who are you?" Air managed, her voice a mixture of outrage and fear. Sam didn't answer. He placed a hand on Jane's forehead. His touch was not gentle, but clinical. The ether within Jane, sensing a power greater than its current vessel, surged in response. Crimson light erupted from her, but didn't throw Sam back. Instead, it flowed into his hand, drawn out like poison from a wound. Jane's body arched off the bed, a silent scream on her lips as the ancient power was violently extracted. The liquid reality streamed out of her mouth, her eyes, her pores, coalescing above Sam's palm into a swirling, violent orb of crimson light. The reality stone, freed from its fluid prison for the first time in millennia. As the last of the ether left her, Jane collapsed back onto the bed, gasping. Her eyes fluttered open, bleary and confused. They focused on the man standing over her, holding the source of her torment as if it were a trinket. Her scientific mind, even addled by trauma, made the connection. The CEO, the reclusive genius. "Sam Jackson," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "The Atlas." Sam glanced down at her, his expression unchanging. "Your contribution to science is noted, Dr. Foster. Rest now." He closed his hand, and the reality stone vanished, not into a pocket, but into a fold of space only he could access. He turned to leave and found Frigga standing in the doorway. The queen had felt the disturbance, the sudden absence of the ether's malevolent signature. She saw the terrified healers, the exhausted Jane, and the man who had saved her life days before. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with a dawning, terrifying understanding. "You," she breathed. "You took it. You confronted my husband, and you won." Sam met her gaze. A transaction was completed. The asset has been secured. The realms are safer for it. He gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "The debt remains, Queen Frigga, but the interest has been paid." Before she could form a response, the space around Sam simply inverted. He didn't vanish in a flash or a puff of smoke. One moment he was there, and the next the space he occupied was empty, as if he had never been there at all. The magical wards in the room slowly flickered back to life. Frigga stood frozen, staring at the empty space. She had seen gods and monsters, but she had never seen someone simply unexist from a location. The quiet, her husband had called it. It was more terrifying than any roar. Atlas Biotech, penthouse. Sam reappeared in his lab, the transition as silent as his departure. The reality stone materialized in his hand, pulsing with untamed power. Etherlink. Host. Welcome back. I detected a massive ontological shift. You have secured the ether. I have, Sam confirmed, placing the stone on a reinforced analysis plate. Initiate 2 new projects. Designation, Aegis Vault. Specifications, a containment system for the reality stone. It must be able to withstand and channel its reality-altering properties without degradation. Use the data we acquired from the Dark Elf scans on dimensional phasing. I want it isolated in a pocket reality of our own design. Acknowledged. Project Aegis Vault initiated. Second project, Sam continued, his voice dropping, becoming colder and more purposeful. Designation, Infinity. The air in the lab seemed to grow still. Clarify parameters for project, Infinity. The ether is not a singular anomaly. It is one of 6. The Tesseract, the Scepter, the Power Stone on Morag, the Time Stone with the Ancient One, the Soul Stone on Vormir. I want a comprehensive, multi-phase strategy to locate, acquire, and secure all 6 Infinity Stones. He looked at the swirling red stone on the plate. Thanos seeks them to impose his will upon the universe through genocide and terror. A crude, wasteful application. I will collect them to impose order, to silence the chaos, to build a universe that cannot break. Project Infinity initiated. Etherlink responded, its tone devoid of emotion, simply processing the monumental task. I will begin by cross-referencing all cosmic energy signatures in our database and developing acquisition protocols for each known stone. The Tesseract is the most accessible, currently within SHIELD custody. Leave the Tesseract for now. Let Fury think it's safe. Our first priority is the Power Stone. Its location is fixed, and its guardians are long dead. It is the simplest to acquire. Begin drafting plans for a deep space vessel. We're going to Morag. Sam picked up the data slate for the Aegis Steward, the household robot. It seemed almost laughably small now. He was no longer just building a company or an army. He had taken the first tangible step toward a goal that would make gods and titans tremble. He was building a gauntlet for the universe itself, and he would be the one to snap his fingers. Atlas Biotech, penthouse. The reality stone was secured within the first layer of the Aegis Vault, a shimmering field of phase dimensions containing its chaotic hum. Sam stood before the project board, his gaze sweeping from the schematics of the hypercell battery, a device that could power a city block for a decade, to the genetic sequences of the Genesis serum, aimed at triggering a controlled, perfect human regeneration. Etherlink. Host. Prioritize and execute all pending operations. You have full autonomous control. Finalize the hypercell mass production model and begin discrete market seeding. Advance the Genesis serum to Phase 2 trials on the designated non-human primates. Continue all R&D threads for Project Aegis and Project Infinity. I will be offline. Acknowledged. Assuming full operational control. All projects are green. Safe travels. Host. Sam picked up a secure satellite phone, a mundane tool for a conversation that needed to seem normal. The line connected after a few rings, the sound of bustling city noise and distant samba music filling the background. Sam? Hey, little surprised to hear from you. Kyle's voice came through, cheerful. You wouldn't believe the samples we're getting down here. The bioprospecting is insane. I can imagine, Sam replied, his tone effortlessly shifting into the persona of the preoccupied CO. Listen, something's come up. A lead on a new, ultra-rare mineral deposit. The location is extremely remote. I'm going to be completely off-grid for a bit. No sat phone, no Etherlink. Maybe a week, maybe two. Off-grid? You, Sam's father, came on the line, his voice laced with paternal concern. Sam, are you sure that's safe? Where's this place? The middle of the Sahara. Something like that, Sam said, a faint smile touching his lips as he looked out the window at the New York skyline. The signal integrity where I'm going is 0. It's a total blackout zone. Don't worry if you don't hear from me. It means I'm on the verge of securing something that will make Atlas the only name in next-generation energy. There was a pause on the other end. All right, son, David said reluctantly. Just be careful. We'll hold down the fort. The Genesis serum is looking promising, by the way. Very promising. Good. Keep me updated via message. I'll get them when I'm back in range. Take care of yourselves. He ended the call, the casual lie settling into the air. It was a necessary layer of insulation, a thread of normalcy to maintain his cover. His preparations were not those of a standard explorer. He walked to a reinforced cabinet and retrieved a small, nondescript backpack. Into it, he placed only 3 items. A liter canteen of water, a single, high-calorie nutrient bar of his own design, and a slim data slate containing the star charts for this universe, pirated from S.H.I.E.L.D., Asgard, and the dark elf navigational databases he had subconsciously scanned during the invasion. He didn't need a spacesuit. His transcendent body and his authority over space could withstand the void. He didn't need food. His metabolic processes could be suspended almost indefinitely. These items were contingencies, a nod to the logic of preparation, not necessity. Slinging the pack over his shoulders, he stepped into the center of the room, where the shadows were deepest in the afternoon light. It's time, he said, to know one and everyone. He didn't open a portal. He simply took a step, and the world dissolved into a tunnel of rushing darkness and silent, cold stars. It was not the violent, rainbow-hued travel of the Bifrost. It was a seamless transition, a folding of space that respected no distance. He emerged into the absolute silence of the void. Below him, hanging in the blackness like a magnificent blue and white marble, was Earth. The moon was a pockmarked giant to his left, its gray surface stark in the unfiltered sunlight. He was standing on nothing, in the vacuum between worlds, the planet's terminator line casting a sharp division between day and night on the surface below. The experience was tranquil. The cacophony of humanity was gone, replaced by the pure, silent music of orbital mechanics. He took a moment, not in awe, but in assessment. This was his neighborhood now. He reached into the shadow cast by his own body, a profound darkness in the sunlit vacuum, and willed it to life. The darkness pooled, expanded, and erupted. It was not a slow formation, but an instantaneous summoning. From the void, a raven was born, but it was a creature of myth and nightmare, its wingspan stretching nearly a kilometer. Its form was woven from solidified shadow and pinpricks of starlight, its eyes 2 pools of deepest space. It was the Shadow Monarch's steed, a being designed not for planetary flight, but for sailing the solar winds. Sam stepped onto its back, his feet finding purchase on the seemingly insubstantial form as if it were solid ground. The Greater Magellanic Cloud, Sam commanded, his voice of thought transmitted through their link. There is a world there the Kree call Half-World. We will use it as a navigational waypoint before proceeding to Morag. The colossal raven gave a silent, psychic cry that would have shattered eardrums had there been an atmosphere to carry it. Then, it folded the space around itself. There was no burst of light, no fiery exhaust. The space in front of it compressed, and the space behind it expanded. With a silent, impossible lurch that defied physics, the Raven and its passenger shot forward, achieving faster-than-light travel not by moving through space, but by manipulating the fabric of space itself. Earth and Moon shrank to insignificance in an instant, becoming just two more stars in the vast tapestry behind them. Sam Jackson stood unwavering on the back of the Cosmic Raven, a lone architect on a silent journey to claim the first stone in his gauntlet, leaving a sleeping Earth none the wiser. The journey was not a passage, but a manipulation. Sam stood immobile on the back of the colossal Shadow Raven, the universe streaming around him in a silent, dark river. Stars stretched into lines of light, then collapsed back into points as the Raven continuously folded and unfolded the fabric of space. He was not a passenger. He was the navigator, his will directing the celestial steed. His mind, free from the distractions of Earth, plotted the threads of his destiny. Project Infinity was the goal. The Power Stone on Morag was the next tangible objective. But a mind like his did not think in single, linear steps. He thought in networks, in systems. To control the universe's fundamental forces, he needed more than just the stones. He needed infrastructure, intelligence, a power base that was entirely his, untouched by the decaying legacy of gods or the chaotic fledgling efforts of humanity. Half-World was a data point, a potential resource. But was it the optimal first acquisition? Host. Etherlink's voice was a calm data stream in his consciousness, a tether back to his earthly operations. Anomaly detected, bypassing designated course by 0.3 light-years. A Class K red giant in its final stages of collapse. Its core is undergoing rapid degeneration. The energy signature is compatible with the multiplier system's activation matrix. Sam's focus sharpened. The multiplier system, a fundamental authority that allowed him to enhance non-living matter, increasing its properties by an order of magnitude. A way to turn a gun into a weapon that could destroy a country, or a battery into a near-perpetual power source. But it required a specific, massive energy input to function. Define compatible, Sam commanded. The stellar collapse is generating a surge of potential energy, which is the universal origin energy that can be harnessed to power the system. Preliminary analysis suggests it could generate enough charge for 3 activations, with a maximum multiplier cap of 100x. 3 uses. It was not infinite, but it was a strategic resource of unimaginable value. A way to create 3 perfect, unparalleled artifacts. Alter course. We are diverting. The Raven banked on a non-existent wind, and the starscape outside shifted. The silent river of light bent toward a sullen, crimson glow in the distance. The crucible of a sun. The star filled their view, a massive, angry sphere of red, its outer layers already dissipating into a vast nebular shroud. It was a dying titan, its core struggling against the inevitable gravitational collapse. The heat and radiation that would have vaporized any known substance washed over Sam's absolute transcendent body without effect. It was less than a breeze. It was nothing. Can the Raven contain the energy stream? Sam asked. Negative. The Raven is a construct for spatial traversal, not a conduit for stellar-scale energy transfer. You must be the conduit, host. Your authority over space can create a localized funnel to direct the energy into the system's matrix. Sam nodded. He stepped off the Raven's back, standing alone in the void before the dying sun. He raised his hands. The space directly in front of the star's core warped. It was a perfectly engineered funnel, a flaw in the universe's fabric designed not to contain the energy, but to channel it. The star, sensing a path for its pin-up energy, reacted. A final, titanic pulse of power, the last breath of a celestial body, surged not outward, but into Sam's constructed anomaly. The energy did not touch his physical form. It flowed around him, a river of cosmic potential bypassing an immovable rock, and was siphoned directly into the conceptual framework of the multiplier system within him. He felt no weight, no strain. His body was merely the anchor point for a process that operated on a higher level. He watched with dispassionate interest as the star's light winked out, its core energy harvested. What remained was a rapidly cooling husk, destined to become a white dwarf. In the sudden, absolute darkness, Sam floated. A new, profound readiness hummed within him. The system was charged. Absorption complete, ether link confirmed. Multiplier system is now active and charged for 3 uses. Maximum multiplier cap, 100x. Sam summoned the raven anew from the void and continued his journey. The detour had taken less than a minute. Half-world orbit. The planet was a riot of color and contradiction. Lush, untamed jungles bordered crystalline structures that spoke of advanced, if abandoned, technology. From orbit, he could see the geometric patterns of cities, but no energy signatures of industry or large-scale power grids. Etherlink. Full planetary scan. Focus on technological remnants, biological anomalies, and intelligent life. The results flooded his mind. He saw the anthropomorphic animals, raccoons, rabbits, otters, living in a structured, if primitive, society. He saw the ruins of the genetic engineering facilities, the cybernetics labs, now overgrown. He saw a population that was the product of experimentation, left to fend for itself, their innate cleverness evident in the cobbled-together technology they used. It was a planet of immense potential, with a pre-built, non-industrialized society sitting on a treasure trove of lost technology. And it was utterly undefended. The Kree had abandoned it. The Galactic Council had no presence here. It was a forgotten asset. A perfect foundation, Sam murmured. He watched a particularly clever-looking raccoon tinkering with a piece of old machinery, creating a complex device from scrap. The ingenuity was palpable. This was not a population to be conquered or subjugated. It was a resource to be curated. With the multiplier system now active, the potential was staggering. He could enhance their core technologies, their materials, by an order of magnitude, creating a technological base centuries ahead of anyone else's. Etherlink, add a new subproject under project. Infinity. Designation, Arcadia. Parameters? This planet. We will not exploit it. We will integrate it. Begin drafting plans for a silent, orbital network, Aegis satellites, armed with non-lethal suppression fields and long-range scanners. We will create a hidden shipyard here, in the system's asteroid belt. We will use the existing genetic and cybernetic data to create a specialized labor and defense force, uplifting the natives through opportunity, not force. He saw it all, laid out like a blueprint. Half-world would become Arcadia, the silent, unseen heart of his growing empire. A world of brilliant, loyal engineers and soldiers, protected by his technology and enhanced by the multiplier, utterly devoted to the architect who gave them purpose beyond mere survival. Morag can wait a few hours longer, Sam decided, his gaze fixed on the world below. It's time to make my first real investment. The Shadow Raven began its descent, not as a conqueror, but as a new owner surveying his latest and most promising property. Order was coming to Half-world. Half-world! The Shadow Raven flew silently through the atmosphere, leaving behind no thermal signature or shockwave. Sam stood on its back, feeling no pressure or cold from the wind of this foreign world. He guided the Raven to land in a clearing at the edge of a vast, metallic forest. This place had giant, crystalline trees intertwined with the rusted remains of old server arrays. The huge bird of shadow landed, its large wings folding. It did not disappear. It stayed, a kilometer-wide figure of living darkness, its star-filled eyes observing the grove with quiet, ancient wisdom. Its presence felt heavy on the world, a wordless claim of power. Sam stepped off, his shoes making contact with the soft, mossy ground. The shadow at the Raven's feet grew, merging with the area around it. At that moment, a familiar and deep presence reached out to him in his mind. Its voice resonated like something he had experienced in a past life. It felt like an essential part of him that had been asleep until now. Ding! 10,000 times multiplier strengthening system is online. Welcome back, host. Took you long enough. Current limit, 100x multiplier. Uses 3. A slow, genuine smile spread across Sam's lips, a rare sign of pure satisfaction. It wasn't the smile of a man who had just gained a new tool. It was the smile of a king who had just been reunited with his scepter. The energy of the dying star hadn't just energized the system. It had been the key that turned the lock and opened the doors to a vault of power that belonged to him. Welcome back, he thought. The feeling was both a command and an acknowledgement. It felt complete. His authority over space was one pillar of his dominion. This, the absolute, unrestricted authority to enhance all of creation, was the other. Now, the throne was complete. Ether link, he communicated, his mental voice carrying a new, unshakable certainty. Integrate the system's full parameters. All previous strategic models are obsolete. Recalibrate everything. Acknowledged host. The strategic potential has undergone a fundamental paradigm shift. All projections updated. The scope of project, infinity and project. Arcadia has been expanded by several orders of magnitude. He turned his attention back to the grove, his perception of the rusted technology around him now fundamentally altered. It was no longer scrap. It was raw, unformed clay, waiting for his touch to become a masterpiece. Deep-level diagnostic scan of this network hub. I want access to the planetary data core. Scanning. The architecture is pre-Imperial. The systems are in a state of advanced decay. Downloading planetary logs and genetic research manifests. As data flooded his consciousness, a proximity alert chimed. Host. Multiple biological signatures approaching. They are armed. Sam didn't turn. He continued to sift through the planet's history, now viewing it through the lens of his restored power. He saw the logs of the experiments, the creation of the anthropomorphic beings, the Kree's panicked retreat. All of it was merely prelude. The rustle in the crystalline leaves behind him was loud. A voice, gruff and laced with a guttural accent, barked a command. Hey, you, turn around slowly. Sam finished reading. He slowly turned, the ghost of that satisfied smile still playing on his features, which now seemed to the newcomers to be not just calm, but eerily, divinely content. Facing him was a squad led by a bipedal raccoon, clutching a large, cobbled-together blaster rifle. Behind him stood a hulking otter, a cybernetically enhanced rabbit, and others. Their bravado was palpable, but their eyes kept flicking past Sam to the immense, silent raven looming behind him, its sheer scale draining their courage. The raccoon, Rocket, swallowed hard, trying to keep his blaster steady. You're not a Kree. What are you? This is our scrap. Our world. You are the inheritors of a failed enterprise, Sam stated, his voice calm, yet now carrying the unshakable confidence of a man who could reshape the very atoms of their scrap into god metal. The Kree left you with nothing but their garbage. You fight over scraps while a galaxy of plenty ignores you. Yeah? And you're here to help. Rocket sneered, though it lacked its usual force. I'm here to build, Sam replied, the finality in his tone absolute. And you will be the foundation. Before they could retort, Sam gestured, not to them, but to the shadows now staining the grove. From the darkness at the base of the ruined servers, figures emerged. Dozens of them. They were humanoid shadows, featureless and silent, their forms hinting at armor and tools. They moved with an unnerving, fluid purpose. Some began to clear debris with impossible strength, their hands passing through solid metal, which then dissolved into motes of dark energy. Others accessed broken terminals, their touch causing corrupted screens to flare to life with clean, geometric data streams. A third group moved past the stun squad, fanning out into the jungle to gather information and, presumably, to gather others. Rocket and his crew could only watch, their weapons slowly lowering, utterly forgotten in the face of this silent, systematic takeover. Flashback, one cycle prior, the Vault of Broken Promises. Rocket led the way, his cybernetic tail twitching with excitement. I'm telling you, Lilla, this is it. The Motherlode. A fully intact Kree med bay. They slipped into a hidden bunker, sealed for centuries. Inside, amidst dust and decay, stood a single, cylindrical pod, a genetic stabilization capsule. According to the schematics Rocket had painstakingly pieced together, it was designed to correct genetic drift and enhance physical attributes for Kree soldiers. This can fix us, Lilla the Otter whispered, her voice full of hope. Make us normal, strong. They spent days powering it, repairing conduits. Finally, with a shuddering hum, the capsule activated. Rocket, ever the pioneer, went first. The pod sealed, light scanned him, and then nothing. A harsh error code flashed on the screen. Subject genome incompatible. Corruption irreversible. Procedure aborted. One by one they tried. The rabbit, Jax, received the same message. Lilla, the most hopeful, stepped in last, only to be met with the same cold, final rejection. The machine, built for the pristine Kree genome, could not comprehend or correct the corrupted, spliced DNA of the animal folk. It was a promise of salvation, broken. They left the bunker in defeated silence, the memory of that failure a fresh wound. The grove, present. As a shadow people worked, Etherlink's voice echoed in Sam's mind. Host, cross-referencing the planetary logs with the technological remnants. I have identified a point of significant psychological leverage. The native population refers to a vault of broken promises. It contains a Kree genetic stabilization capsule. The device is functional, but its programming cannot process their hybrid DNA. It represents their greatest failure and their deepest desire. Sam's eyes, which had been observing the efficient work of his shadows, gleamed with cold calculation. An animal army, loyal not through fear, but through transcendent gratitude. It was a more durable foundation. Location. Coordinates locked. Retrieve it. From the swirling darkness at Sam's feet, two shadow soldiers detached and melted into the ground. They returned moments later, carrying the cylindrical capsule between them, placing it silently before him. Rocket and his crew gasped, taking a step back. Ow, how did you? Jax the rabbit stammered. Sam ignored him, running a hand over the cold cream metal. A crude tool, limited by the imagination of its creators. He looked at Rocket, whose face was a mask of old pain and fresh anger. This machine told you that you were broken. Irreversible. He placed both hands on the capsule's housing. There was no strain, no gathering of energy. He simply willed it, accessing the new, permanent authority now bound to his soul. Ding! 10,000 times multiplier strengthening system has detected a Kree medical capsule. Initiating enhancement. 1%, 10%, 100%, 10,000%. Upgrade complete. Congratulations, host. You have strengthened the Kree Med capsule into Eternal Genesis Core. Item, Eternal Genesis Core. Grade, Transcendent Divine Artifact. Origin, when science touched the edge of creation, this core was born. Its data threads run through time itself, rewriting existence like code. Description, a relic that merges Kree biotechnology with the breath of creation. The capsule no longer heals, it redefines. Once activated, it emits origin particles that reconstruct anything it touches back to its perfect, intended form. Even death is considered a correctable flaw. Abilities, absolute restoration, can rebuild a being from dust, memory, or concept. Genesis Pulse creates new life forms with predetermined evolution paths. Law Imprint infuses healed creatures with a personal law. Flame beasts command fire. Water beasts shape oceans. Mind beasts bend thought. Planetary Awakening. When deployed on Half-World, the planet awakens as a living entity, its biosphere linked to the core. Reality Override. The core's energy is not used. It resets reality to a state where depletion never existed. The transformation was instantaneous and profound. The capsule morphed from dull metal into a seamless, opalescent pearl-white shell. The internal components became flowing channels of liquid light. The control panel vanished, replaced by a smooth, intuitive holographic interface that pulsed with a soft, golden rhythm. It was no longer a machine. It was an artifact of a higher order. Sam turned to the stunned animals. The Kree tool was designed for a single, rigid purpose. It saw you as heirs. He gestured to the transcendent device. This sees only potential. It will not reject you. It will perfect you. He looked directly at Rocket, his gaze absolute. The meeting is tomorrow. The future is no longer a broken promise. He turned and walked back towards the waiting Raven, the shadows and their silent workers continuing their tasks around him. He did not need to dismiss the Raven to intimidate them. Its perpetual, looming presence, coupled with the miracle he had just performed, was a more powerful chain than any threat. They were no longer just defending their scrap. They were witnessing the birth of a god, and he was offering them a place in his new creation. Location: Half-World. The presence of the Eternal Genesis core was a physical weight in the grove, a promise so potent it felt like a new law of physics. Rocket, Lilla, Jax, and the others could only stare, their minds reeling from the impossible transition from rusted failure to transcendent artifact. The air itself seemed to thicken with potential, each breath tasting of ozone and something else, something new. Sam observed their awe, a clinical satisfaction settling within him. The psychological impact was precisely as calculated. But a tool of this magnitude was not to be activated on a whim. Its unveiling would be an event, a ceremony to cement his authority and bind this world to him irrevocably. The promise is now tangible, Sam stated, his voice pulling them from their stupor. But a new dawn deserves a proper audience. The meeting is tomorrow, as stated, and everyone is invited. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't give a command audible to them. He simply willed it. Across Half-World, the shadows stirred. In a dusty canyon, a family of armadillo-like engineers looked up from their geothermal tap to see the shadows in the ravine coalesce into silent, humanoid forms. In the humid, bioluminescent swamps, a tribe of frog-like creatures watched as the darkness between the glowing fungi thickened and stepped forward. There was no aggression, no sound, only an implacable, gentle pressure. The shadow people did not drag or threaten. They simply appeared, a silent, endless river of them, and began to guide. They pointed. They gestured. They made the path to the grove of forgotten code the only logical direction to walk. Those who hesitated found the ways behind them softening into impassable walls of gloom. Those who ran found that every path, every turn, inevitably led them toward the gathering. It was a planetary-scale migration executed in utter silence, a display of control so absolute it felt like fate itself. Back in the grove, Rocket and his crew watched, their small world shattered, as the clearing began to fill. The initial trickle of creatures, a few scared foxes, a hesitant badger, swelled into a river, then a sea of beings. The air filled with a low, anxious hum of chitters, barks, and whispers, a symphony of confusion and a dawning, terrified hope. They were all here, the clever, the strong, the meek, the broken. Every soul on Half-World, gently but inexorably herded by the silent shadows. Sam stood before the pulsing Eternal Genesis core, the Shadow Raven an impassive monument behind him. He said nothing, simply allowing the scale of the event to imprint itself upon every conscious mind. The display of power, the effortless summoning of an entire planet's population, was as potent a message as the miracle of the core itself. He was not a visitor. He was the environment. His gaze swept over the multitude, finally landing back on Rocket, whose face was a canvas of conflict, all warring with a lifetime of ingrained suspicion. Rest now, Sam's voice carried, calm and absolute, to the very edges of the vast, silent crowd. The murmuring ceased instantly. Tomorrow, your world begins. With that, he turned and walked into the shadow cast by the Raven. He didn't vanish in a flash. The darkness simply accepted him, and he was gone. He left them there, thousands of beings under the watchful stars, surrounded by a silent army of shadows, with the heart of their reborn world pulsing gently before them. The night was deep, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves and the quiet, anxious breaths of a populace holding its collective breath. The anticipation was a physical force, thicker than the atmosphere. The longest night of their lives had begun, and with the dawn, Genesis would arrive. Next morning, the first light of half-world sun did not so much break as it succumbed. It spilled over the horizon only to be absorbed by the sheer presence gathered in the grove. The sea of animal folk had not slept. How could they? They had spent the night standing, sitting, or crouching under the silent watch of the shadow people, the pulsing light of the eternal Genesis core the only campfire they needed. The air was thick with a silence that was neither peaceful nor fearful, but anticipatory. It was the silence of a breath held before plunge. As the sun's rays finally touched the core itself, Sam emerged. He did not step out of shadow or descend from the raven. One moment, the space before the core was empty. The next, he was simply there, as if he had always been part of the scene. He wore the same simple, modern attire, a stark contrast to the divine artifact beside him. His hands were clasped behind his back. No fanfare, no greeting. His gaze swept across the assembled thousands, and his voice, when it came, required no elevation to reach the farthest listener. The Cree saw you as failed experiments, scraps to be abandoned. He began to walk slowly along the front of the crowd, his eyes missing nothing. You have internalized that lie. You see yourselves as scavengers, fighting for survival in a universe that has forgotten you. He stopped, turned to fully face them. That era ended last night. He gestured to the eternal Genesis core. This device does not fix flaws. It reveals potential. It does not heal wounds. It rewrites history so the wound never existed. It will not make you normal. It will make you what you were always meant to be. A wave of uneasy shuffling and whispered translations moved through the crowd. It was a promise too vast to comprehend. I am not a savior. I am an architect, Sam continued, his tone utterly matter-of-fact. I am building a universe of order, and this world, your world, will be its cornerstone. In return for your loyalty and your labor, I offer you this: purpose, power, and a place in the new reality. He turned and placed a hand on the core. The first demonstration. He didn't ask for a volunteer. His was command enough. Ding! Activating Eternal Genesis core. Target: planetary biosphere and designated population. Initiating Genesis pulse. The core did not explode with light. It breathed. A wave of golden energy, silent and profound, washed out from the core. It was not a blast, but a transformation. As it passed over the animal folk, it was not a violent force, but a gentle, undeniable correction. A badger in the front row, missing an eye from a long-ago fight, blinked as a new, perfectly functioning eye simply appeared in the empty socket. An elderly otter, her back bent with age, suddenly straightened, the years falling away from her not as a reversal, but as a restoration to her prime. Jax the rabbit stared at his cybernetic arm. The metal seamlessly integrated, becoming living, feeling tissue stronger than any alloy. But it was more than physical. Rocket felt it like a lightning strike. The constant, gnawing ache of his imperfect genesis, the feeling of being a mistake that had been the bedrock of his entire personality, vanished. It was replaced by a terrifying, exhilarating clarity. His mind, always sharp, now felt like a polished diamond, seeing connections and solutions he never could before. He wasn't just fixed, he was optimized. And then the law imprint began. A fox-like creature near the back suddenly gasped as flames, harmless and controlled, danced along his fingertips. A large, bear-like being felt the ground beneath his feet respond to his unspoken will, the soil shifting and hardening. Lilla, the otter, looked at a puddle of water and watched it rise into a perfect, swirling orb at her mental command. The Genesis pulse washed over the entire planet. The gray, crystalline trees began to glow with a soft, internal light. The The rusted Cree ruins shimmered and reformed into elegant, organic-looking structures that hummed with power. The very air grew cleaner, easier to breathe. Half-World was no longer a scarred relic. It was awake. It was alive. And it was theirs. Sam stood before them, the architect of their rebirth. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft, awed whispers of those discovering their new selves. "The work begins now," Sam said, his voice the calm at the center of the storm. "You are no longer the people of Half-World. You are the Genesis Guard, the first citizens of the new order." He looked out at the transformed faces, seeing not gratitude, but a nascent, fanatical devotion. He had not just given them a gift. He had given them a cause. "Your first task is to build the shipyard. The galaxy awaits." The silence broke. It didn't shatter into chaos, but resolved into a low, purposeful hum. The Genesis Guard moved, not as a frantic mob, but as a single organism awakening to its purpose. The blueprints Etherlink had implanted in their minds were no longer just images, they were instincts. Rocket found his paws moving almost without conscious thought. He strode toward a pile of the newly transformed Cree alloy, a material that seemed to be both metal and living crystal. He didn't need tools. He placed his hands on a slab, and his mind communicated the necessary shape. The material flowed like liquid light, hardening in seconds into a complex engine housing that gleamed with internal power. He looked over at Lilla. She stood before a half-formed power conduit, her hands outstretched. The water from a nearby stream rose in shimmering tendrils, weaving itself through the structure, not as a coolant, but as a living, conductive medium that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She was not building the ship, she was growing it. This was the true meaning of the law imprint. They weren't just using elements. They were commanding the fundamental principles of reality. A badger whose law was of earth and stone smoothed a landing strut's connection to the ground, the soil itself reforging into a perfect foundation. A fox whose law was of ember and heat focused his will on a welding point, fusing components with a glance that left no seam, only a perfect, unbreakable bond. Sam observed from a slight rise, the shadow raven a silent sentinel behind him. He did not interfere. He did not need to. The Genesis pulse had not just healed them. It had made them perfect extensions of his will. They were building their own destiny, and in doing so, they were building exactly what he needed. The speed was breathtaking. Where there had been only a skeleton at dawn, by high sun a hull was taking shape, sleek and predatory, its lines echoing the Shadow Raven's own dark grace. It was not a design born in any Cree or human shipyard. It was a new thing, an organic fusion of shadow, crystal, and elemental force. Rocket, overseeing the integration of the primary thrusters, felt a strange absence of the usual frustration that accompanied a complex build. Problems presented themselves and were solved almost before he could fully articulate them. His enhanced mind, coupled with an intuitive understanding of the materials, made the process feel less like construction and more like remembrance, as if he were merely recalling how the ship was always meant to be. As the second sun began to set, the ship was complete. It rested in the grove, a vessel of impossible beauty and menace. It was longer than the Raven was wide, its hull a deep, non-reflective black that seemed to drink the light, shot through with veins of captured starlight. It had no visible engines, only smooth, sweeping lines that promised silent, devastating speed. The Genesis Guard gathered around it, their work done. There was no cheering, only a profound, shared silence. They looked from the ship they had built in a single day to the man who had made it possible. Sam descended from the rise and walked toward the ship. He placed a hand on its hull, feeling the hum of contained power, the echo of the laws imprinted upon it. "It is ready," he stated. The words were not a question. "It is Architect," Rocket said, his voice steady. The title felt natural on his tongue. Sam turned to face them, his gaze sweeping over the Genesis Guard. "This is the Whisper of Dawn, the first vessel of the Genesis fleet. It is proof of your purpose. While I am gone, you will secure this system. You will build the shipyard. You will prepare. He did not say goodbye. He simply turned and walked up the ramp that seamlessly opened in the ship's hull. It closed behind him without a sound. Inside, the bridge was austere. There were no consoles, no view screens. The walls were smooth, dark crystal. As Sam willed it, the space in front of him became transparent, showing the grove, the Genesis Guard, and the stars beyond. The whisper of dawn rose. There was no roar of engines, no blast of heat. It simply ascended, as silent as its name, cutting through the atmosphere without a ripple. In moments, it was in the void, half-world a receding jewel below. Sam stood on the bridge, his destination clear in his mind. The detour was over. The investment was made. Set course for Morag, he commanded the silent ship. The space ahead folded. The whisper of dawn slipped into the nothing between seconds, leaving the awakened world behind. The hunt for the Power Stone had begun, and the hunter no longer traveled alone. He now had the full, silent weight of a Genesis world at his back. The silence of the whisper of dawn was absolute. It didn't travel through space so much as it politely asked reality to step aside. One moment, the ship was hanging in the void near Half-World. The next, it was drifting in the gloomy orbit of a waterlogged, desolate planet. Morag. Rain fell in endless, gray sheets over rust-colored rock and vast, shallow seas. The ruins of a long-dead civilization dotted the landscape, their structures worn smooth by eons of wind and water. It was a tomb. Sam stood on the bridge, the planet filling his view. He could feel it, a low, throbbing hum of pure, undiluted power calling from beneath the surface. The Power Stone. It was like a gravitational anomaly that only he could perceive. The temple is buried beneath the main ocean. Etherlink's voice was a soft chime in the stillness. Scans indicate the entrance is cyclically exposed during the planet's extreme low tides. The next window is in approximately 6 hours. Unnecessary, Sam replied. He didn't move from a bridge. He simply focused, his consciousness expanding through the ship and into the planet below. He sought not a door, but the absence the stone created, a hole in reality where power pooled so thickly it warped the fabric of space around it. He found it, a chamber deep beneath the planet's crust, hidden behind layers of rock and forgotten engineering. On the surface, the water over a particular patch of ocean began to churn. It didn't part so much as it unfolded. A perfect, dry shaft opened from the ocean floor down through the rock, a tunnel that ignored geology, leading straight to the hidden temple's inner sanctum. It was a doorway made not by moving earth, but by redefining the space between here and there. Sam took a single step on the bridge of the Whisper of Dawn, and took his next step onto the cold, dry stone of the temple floor. The air was stale and ancient. The chamber was circular, dominated by a central dais. Upon it rested a simple, metallic orb, humming with a malevolent violet light that pulsed in time with the heartbeat of the universe. The Power Stone. As Sam approached, ancient security measures, dormant for millennia, flared to life. Energy fields shimmered into existence, and automated defense turrets emerged from the walls, their targeting lasers painting his chest. They were irrelevant. Sam didn't raise a hand in defense. He simply continued walking. The energy fields dissolved as he neared, not because he broke them, but because the space they occupied ceased to be a barrier. The turrets swiveled, but the lasers bent away from him, refusing to acknowledge his location. He was a null point in their programming, a walking hole in causality. He stood before the dais and reached for the orb. The moment his fingers made contact, the stone reacted. It was not a test of worthiness. It was an assault. A wave of pure, destructive force erupted, a psychic scream that sought to atomize his will and incinerate his soul. It was the raw, untamed concept of power, and it rejected any master. It washed over Sam and found nothing to burn. His will was not something to be overpowered. It was the framework that contained power. The violet energy raged against the edges of his consciousness, a star-going supernova inside a box it could not break. It was immense, terrifying, and utterly contained. He held the orb in his hand, the stone's violent light reflecting in his calm eyes. "Your chaos ends now," he said, his voice quiet in the raging storm. He willed it, and the storm ceased. The Power Stone, for the first time in its existence, was silent. Contained. Tamed. He opened the orb. The stone floated above his palm, pulsing with subdued might. He didn't store it in a pocket. He opened a fold in space, a perfect, timeless vault next to the one holding the reality stone, and placed it inside. 2 stones. As the vault sealed, the hidden temple on Morag, its purpose fulfilled, began to crumble. Without the stone's energy to sustain its hidden geometry, the ancient structures succumbed to entropy. Sam stood amidst the collapsing ruins, untouched by the falling rock and dust. He looked up, through the layers of crumbling stone and the shaft he had created, to where his ship waited in orbit. His work here was done. The first piece of the gauntlet was in his hand. The balance of power in the universe had just shifted, and no one but him even knew it. He took a step and was back on the bridge of the Whisper of Dawn. Behind him, on the dead world of Morag, the ocean rushed in to fill the void, burying the last secret of the Power Stone forever.